Early morning, at the office of the CEO of Literati Company. Charles Harrington sat at his desk, while Serena Clark walked up, raising her chin high, and impatiently spoke, "Let's break up." Charles Harrington remained seated, his eyes still fixed on the screen, calmly replied, "Stop causing trouble, can't you see I'm busy?" Seeing the person in front of her acting so focused on work, Serena Clark let out a cold laugh. She stepped around the desk, pulled out the keyboard, and pressed a few keys. The computer screen instantly changed, and feminine voices echoed from the speakers. Charles Harrington's expression changed immediately. Reflexively, he reached for the keyboard. Serena Clark chuckled dismissively, asking, "What do you want to do?" "I want to break up with you." Serena Clark smiled, then let out a cold snicker before continuing, "I've said what I wanted to say. I'm leaving." With that, she really intended to leave. Charles Harrington panicked, hurriedly grabbing her collar, "Serena Clark, don't take yourself too seriously." Pulled back, Serena Clark turned her head, looking provocatively at Charles Harrington. "Oh, what's this? Can't bear to let me go?" She paused for a moment, then laughed coldly. "Mr. Harrington, standing so high above, could it be that you want to make me your backup?" Her voice was light, but full of determination. Charles Harrington's face immediately turned darker than the bottom of a pot. He still wanted to say something, but Serena Clark had already flicked her hair stylishly, striding confidently in her high heels, and had almost reached the door of the office. But just as she was about to open the door, a tear unexpectedly rolled down Serena Clark's face. The night had grown late, and the Dreamscape bar was loud and bustling. All kinds of men and women, from all walks of life, clinked glasses and drank together, painting a picture of luxury and decadence. Serena Clark was drinking hard liquor as if it were water, with her head filled with images from the morning, of those two people. The boyfriend who, just yesterday, had said he loved her, now lying naked with her own sister on her bed. Serena Clark let out a cold laugh, downed several more gulps of strong liquor. Suddenly, a wave of nausea rose within her, and Serena Clark quickly stood up, rushing towards the restroom in panic. Just as she rounded a corner, Serena Clark unexpectedly collided with someone. She slowly lifted her head, seeing the man before her with sharp facial features. His eyes gave a casual glance, yet they were full of authority. His lips were slightly pursed, looking down at her with a cold demeanor. He was exactly her type. Serena Clark's eyes lit up, the alcohol giving her courage, and her hands went around his waist, hugging tightly. "Wow, 8-pack abs," she exclaimed. Through the fabric, Serena Clark could almost feel the strength of his muscles. She instinctively nuzzled her head against him. Serena Clark next to them took a sharp breath. This girl was reckless. Bumping into Victor Stone was one thing, but then overstepping the boundaries like this. In his heart, he silently lit a candle for Serena Clark, hoping someone would clean up the aftermath. Victor Stone squinted his eyes slightly, looking at the woman who had bumped into his arms with indifference. Right now, she actually looked rather obedient, like a little kitten curled up in his embrace. Serena Clark was so drunk that she had lost all her senses, except for the ability to barely recognize someone's face. She just thought that the man in front of her had such an amazing body, making her instinctively want to. In the next second, Victor Stone's tie suddenly tightened, and he instinctively bent down, a delicate little face appearing right in front of him. Serena Clark's eyes almost popped out. Victor Stone didn't push her away, and even let her pull on his tie. Serena Clark's cheeks were slightly flushed, a smile hanging on her lips. She opened her mouth, the strong smell of alcohol wafting out. "Handsome guy, want to play together? The really fun kind." As soon as she finished speaking, a light fragrance wafted past Victor Stone's nose, and Serena Clark suddenly leaned even closer to his face. Just as they were about to kiss, Victor Stone bent forward slightly, completely caught off guard by the situation unfolding in front of him. He was about to raise his hand to push her away when Serena Clark suddenly turned, took out her phone, snapped a selfie, and sent it to someone named Charles Harrington. After that, she let go. Victor Stone's gaze turned cold. This girl pulled him in, just to take a photo to send to someone else. Serena Clark saw everything, her heart pounding, and she patted her chest. "Goodness, Mr. Stone, you scared me to death. I thought it was some harassment, but it turns out it was just a photo together. Come on, let's go in before people laugh at us." But Victor Stone raised one eyebrow, standing still while looking at Serena Clark. He had just been teased by a little girl. After sending the photo, Charles Harrington on the other end started furiously messaging her back. Serena Clark simply put her phone away, knowing that her goal of making him angry had already been achieved. Serena Clark looked at Victor Stone with dreamy eyes. The high bridge of his nose, his delicate lips, and those chiseled facial features, it was just too good-looking. Her heart suddenly skipped a beat. Why could Charles Harrington go find someone else, but she couldn't find a handsome guy like this to keep her company? Thinking that, she reached out and grabbed Victor Stone. "Handsome guy, want to come with me? Sister will take care of you all night." Nathan Cole beside them shivered in fear. This girl must be tired of living, daring to flirt with Mr. Stone like this. To save the misguided girl, Nathan Cole hurried over, forcefully pushing Serena Clark aside. "Go, go, go, what are you thinking? Mr. Stone's bed, you think you can just act dumb and climb in?" Mr. Stone gave a cold glance, and Nathan Cole immediately felt a chill down his spine. Before he could react, Victor Stone had already pushed him aside. Turning his head, eyes wide, he thought Victor Stone was going to hit someone, so he squeezed back in desperately. "Mr. Stone, don't get mad, it's just a drunk girl." Before Nathan Cole could even finish his sentence, a jade-like hand slapped the back of his head, sending him flying from left to right, spinning around like a top beside the two of them. At that moment, Nathan Cole was truly enraged. This girl dared to lay hands on him, wasn't she afraid of death? He was about to use all his strength to pick Serena Clark up and throw her out, but Serena Clark, like a nimble little wildcat, slipped away from his grasp. To make matters worse, she grabbed Victor Stone's collar, picked up some tissues, and stuffed them inside. When her small hand moved away, she intentionally brushed her fingers over Victor Stone's abs. With her small mouth slightly open, she said, "Handsome guy, here's the deposit. If the service is good, there will be a lot more money." Nathan Cole, who was spinning like a top, was so anxious he kept circling around. This girl definitely had no regard for her life anymore, coming here looking for thrills. Before he could act, Victor Stone suddenly nodded and said, "All right." After saying that, Victor Stone was briefly taken aback, but there was a distinct fragrance on Serena Clark, along with her pure and unguarded eyes that couldn't be hidden despite the heavy makeup. It kept drawing him in. Without hesitation, he lifted her in his arms. Nathan Cole saw this scene and nearly fainted, his eyes rolling back. The world must be mad. His company's CEO was actually interested in a woman. Serena Clark cried out, instinctively trying to push Victor Stone away, but he held her tightly, carrying her out of the bar with long strides. "Monster!" Nathan Cole called out powerlessly after the two figures. "How am I supposed to explain this to the clients?" Victor Stone left behind only one light remark, "Double the bonus." Nathan Cole immediately sprang up as if injected with adrenaline, saluting with one hand, "I guarantee mission completion." Early in the morning, a ray of sunlight crept into the hotel room. Serena Clark struggled to move her sore body, letting out a soft sigh. "Did someone beat me up yesterday? Why am I so sore?" There was an ambiguous air lingering in the room. Serena Clark felt something was off, frowning as she sat up. She glanced over to the side and almost fell out of bed. Next to her was a man. She had no recollection of what had happened the previous day. She thought for a moment, could it be that she had acted recklessly after drinking? Partied too hard? Seeing the money scattered around, she felt somewhat reassured. He must be one of those guys offering special services at the bar. Well, he looks handsome, so it's not a loss. While she was thinking, the man turned slightly, revealing his full face. The features were deep, the bridge of his nose was high and straight, and the lips were thin and delicate. This perfect profile, this perfect physique, wasn't this the cold and decisive CEO of Zhending Group, Victor Stone? Oh my God! Serena Clark couldn't dare look at the man beside her any longer. She wished she could take a stick and knock the memory out of him. She hurriedly dressed and slipped out of the room, her movements swift and decisive, much like an unfeeling man leaving after a fling. As for what Victor Stone would do once he woke up, escaping was the most important thing right now. Serena Clark sneaked back home, wondering how she could get upstairs without being noticed. As soon as she opened the door, she caught a whiff of an unusual smell. Sure enough, the moment she stepped inside, she saw Charles Harrington sitting with her father. Not wanting to interact with that jerk, let alone face her father, Serena Clark quietly closed the door, tiptoeing slowly step by step. Serena Clark intended to sneak upstairs through the side hall. Everything went smoothly at first. She bent down, tiptoeing up the stairs, when suddenly, a cold voice froze her in place. She tensed up, hesitated for a moment, and finally stiffly turned around, forcing a strained smile. "Ah, Dad, good morning." "Serena Clark. Young as you are, you've already learned how to stay out all night." Robert Clark slammed his hand down on the table, his shout ringing in Serena Clark's ears, making her shiver. "Yesterday I wasn't feeling good, so I had a few drinks. Couldn't get a ride, so I stayed at a hotel." Serena Clark explained in a small voice, her steps heading upstairs unconsciously speeding up. "Humph, then what's this photo you sent me?" Charles Harrington sneered, throwing the photo harshly onto the table. In the photo, Serena Clark's eyes were half closed, leaning into Victor Stone like a koala. Victor Stone looked slightly surprised, but the curve of his lips and the hand on Serena Clark's shoulder indicated a strong intimacy between the two. Robert Clark took a glance at the photo, immediately grabbing it to examine it carefully. The person in the photo was indeed Serena Clark. As for the man next to her, he didn't care, but it was clear that it wasn't Charles Harrington. Thinking of his daughter putting a green hat on Mr. Harrington, his heart pounded violently. He strode towards Serena Clark, throwing the photo in her face. You. What kind of behavior is this? Apologize to Mr. Harrington at once." Serena Clark was filled with fury. She couldn't believe this bastard dared to be the first to act wrong and even showed the picture to her father. Serena Clark took a deep breath, looked at Charles Harrington coldly, and said, "I broke up with him already." She paused for a moment, then added, "before that photo was taken." Robert Clark was stunned. His daughter dared to unilaterally break up with Charles Harrington without even considering the Clark family's interests. He raised his hand, slapping her hard across the face. Before he could even finish speaking, Charles Harrington's dark voice sounded from behind, "Betraying me and then wanting to break up? If this is the kind of daughter your family has raised, I think there's no need to discuss any future cooperation." Charles Harrington sat on the sofa, one leg crossed over the other, shaking his foot arrogantly. His gaze was clearly threatening. He, Charles Harrington, was openly affectionate with Olivia Clark right in front of me. He was clearly the one at fault first. Why should I apologize? Serena Clark said, her right cheek already red and swollen from the slap, but she held her head high, refusing to back down. Rude. If you keep talking nonsense, don't blame me for disregarding family ties. Apologize to Mr. Harrington right now. Robert Clark sided with his own interests, cutting off Serena Clark's words. Charles Harrington sneered without any remorse. Humph, truly the daughter of CEO Clark, so sharp-tongued. Robert Clark immediately panicked. All along, thanks to Serena Clark, their family had received a lot of benefits from the Harrington family. If this big tree fell now, what would they do? But thinking further, Charles Harrington's betrayal wasn't with anyone else. If it was the second daughter of the Clark family, then it could still be considered the fat water not flowing into others' fields. Sacrificing Serena Clark wasn't entirely impossible. Robert Clark hurriedly stood up, respectfully saying, "Absolutely not. Rest assured, I will have her properly educated. Within half a month, I will make her pack up and leave." Charles Harrington smiled dismissively, completely unconcerned. "All right then, we'll talk about the cooperation after half a month." "No need. I'll kick her out right now, not wait until tomorrow." Robert Clark turned, glaring at Serena Clark. "Aren't you going to pack your things now? Get lost as far as possible, don't dirty Mr. Harrington's eyes." Serena Clark couldn't believe it, her eyes widened as she looked at her father, who suddenly seemed like a stranger. "Dad." Robert Clark, face cold, pushed her away. "Shut up. You've disgraced our family completely. If only you were half as obedient as your sister, I wouldn't be worrying myself to death." Charles Harrington smiled triumphantly, shaking his leg, waiting for Serena Clark to come and beg him. This was the price Serena Clark had to pay for betraying him. But who would have thought that Robert Clark acted as if he were trying to expel a dirty daughter from his house, urgently wanting to send Serena Clark abroad, not even giving her a chance to explain. Serena Clark looked at her emotionless family and the gloating Charles Harrington, then turned and headed back to her room to pack her things. "If that's the case, then I wish you and that woman infertility but many descendants." Charles Harrington's expression immediately changed. She would rather leave than beg him. After packing her belongings, Serena Clark left in style, without looking back even once. In the hotel, Victor Stone had a sweet dream and slept soundly, not waking up until noon. Remembering the woman who was with him yesterday, the corner of his mouth involuntarily curved up slightly. She truly was a cute little wildcat. He reached out to the side, intending to pull her into his arms, but found it empty. He couldn't believe it, sitting up to look around the bed. Nobody was there, and the bed was cold. He got up and searched the room, but still, there was no one. That woman had run away. Victor Stone felt a surge of anger rising. He picked up his phone, called Nathan Cole, and coldly said, "Be in my office in 10 minutes." In the CEO's office, sunlight poured through the shiny windows, accompanied by a few potted plants. But Nathan Cole stood beside, goosebumps covering his whole body. What had he done to deserve this? Mr. Stone got dumped, and now that the person had run away, he came to Nathan Cole asking for her. How would he know where that troublesome girl had run off to? Nathan Cole sighed. "Maybe let it go, Mr. Stone. It was just a fleeting encounter, I can arrange someone prettier for you." Victor Stone, with his back to him, stood at the large floor-to-ceiling window, a low-pressure aura enveloping him. Even just seeing his tall and slender back was enough to tell how unhappy he was. Nathan Cole shivered. Victor Stone, this kind of person, once seen as a cold, emotionless work machine, let alone actively going to bed with someone, would kick away even a girl desperate to climb into his bed. And yet now, he was heartbroken over a woman. That woman must have drugged him while he slept. Sending so many people to look for her is like searching for a needle in a haystack, Nathan Cole probed, trying to gauge his reaction. Victor Stone turned around, his long, narrow eyes narrowed coldly. "Find her. Find her at all costs." Nathan Cole hurriedly agreed, stumbling out of the room in fear. Victor Stone fiddled with the steel pen in his hand. Did she really think she could escape his grasp? Not long after, Nathan Cole came running back, stumbling slightly. "Hey, Mr. Stone, I asked around a lot and finally found out that the woman's name is Serena Clark, the eldest daughter of the Clark family." Victor Stone was reading documents, and upon hearing Nathan Cole speak, he quickly sat up. His cold eyes flickered with a hint of excitement that was difficult to notice. He raised his eyebrows, signaling for Nathan Cole to continue. Nathan Cole scratched his head. She's been arguing with her boyfriend lately. Then, her boyfriend used his company as leverage, forcing her father to send her abroad. Boyfriend? Victor Stone was surprised, and the room's temperature immediately dropped. Nathan Cole shivered, continuing, I investigated it. It's the eldest son of Literati Corporation, Charles Harrington. I've heard before that the guy is just a hypocritical scumbag, he's all about showing off. Victor Stone tightened his grip on the pen, furrowing his brows. So, she had a boyfriend, and he was a notorious jerk. Serena Clark getting drunk last night was certainly because of that man. Thinking of this, Victor Stone felt the anger that had barely calmed down now flare up again. Mr. Stone, are you listening to me? Nathan Cole waved his hand in front of Victor Stone. Seeing him relax his grip, taking deep breaths to calm himself down, he motioned for Nathan Cole to continue. Nathan Cole found it hard to breathe. He felt that the CEO was on the verge of losing control. He looked down at the documents in his hand. In his mind, he prayed to Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and every other religion before finally opening his mouth. Miss Serena Clark very willingly accepted the arrangement. By now, the plane is probably over the Pacific Ocean. As soon as Nathan Cole finished speaking, he heard a sharp sound. Looking down, he saw the pen in Victor Stone's hand had been snapped in two. The temperature around Victor Stone dropped once again. Nathan Cole felt as if he were about to be frozen. Who exactly was this woman, to make a CEO who always concealed his emotions, like Victor Stone, become so easily angered? Nathan Cole was on the verge of tears. CEO, how about we let this go? In such a vast world, why must we be obsessed with a single flower? Nathan Cole felt as if he wanted to stab his own heart. How could he have been so loose-tongued and agreed to meet a client at the bar? He was practically pulling Victor Stone down from the altar. Worse, it was like digging a hole, jumping into it, and burying himself. Victor Stone was silent for a long time. Nathan Cole thought that being his assistant was no different from jumping into a boiling oil pot. Just when he could no longer bear it, Victor Stone finally spoke, give me all her information. Whether she's abroad or at the ends of the earth, bring her back. And about Charles Harrington, Victor Stone sneered, in half a month, I want Literati Corporation to be completely unable to recover. Nathan Cole looked at Victor Stone with pain. Men in love were truly terrifying. Under Victor Stone's orders, all cooperation with Literati Corporation ceased. Charles Harrington didn't know whom he had offended and had to go everywhere asking for help, but the company's employees still kept resigning. The most critical thing was that anyone who helped him also suffered devastating attacks from Victor Stone. Instantly, Charles Harrington became like a plague, everyone avoided him. On the other side, Serena Clark went abroad peacefully, quickly finding a house and a job. 3 days later, she reported to her new company. Though everything went smoothly, she always felt as if there were a pair of eyes in the dark secretly watching her. All her information and photos quickly made their way across the ocean. Nathan Cole gathered all the information, respectfully handing it over to Victor Stone, then said, this is Miss Serena Clark's information overseas. She is currently working at SEC. Now that she is abroad, CEO, maybe we should. Victor Stone furrowed his brows, signaling Nathan Cole to cut off his words, then said coldly, prepare the acquisition contract for SEC. Nathan Cole, standing beside him, was so scared he almost bit his tongue. He stammered for a long while, CEO, that's SEC. Many companies have tried before and couldn't swallow it. He swallowed hard, gulping down the words, don't lose both the lady and the soldiers, into his throat for fear of being beaten to death on the spot by the CEO. Initially, he helped the CEO investigate just so he could let go, but now it seemed to have backfired. Victor Stone gave him a frosty glance. Nathan Cole immediately mimicked zipping his lips, calculating in his mind how much financial pressure acquiring SEC would bring to Thin Duc. When Victor Stone's irritated gaze swept over, he hurriedly. Nathan Cole timidly spoke, CEO, for almost a year now, not 10 years, it seems our company has never mentioned SEC in the company's plans. You should think carefully, isn't this a bit? Victor Stone twirled the pen in his hand, his eyes lowered as he spoke indifferently. As long as Serena Clark is in that company, I will have a plan for acquisition. Now go. Nathan Cole shuddered under Victor Stone's cold gaze, dared not say anything else, and hurriedly ran out to perform his task. In his heart, he silently apologized to the CEO of SEC countless times. It wasn't that he was shameless, but really because their CEO had been blinded by love, turning into a foolish, lovesick, and wealthy man. Unbeknownst to her, Serena Clark had just stepped out of the threshold of her life only to be hit by a harsh setback. On the second day of work, she received a notice that she had to go on a business trip, and the purpose of the trip was to return to her home country. Serena Clark had been forced out of the country, how could she return? As soon as she arrived at the company, she rushed straight into her superior's office, fully prepared to reason with them, to use the best words and reasoning to persuade them, to move her superior to tears and retract the decision. If not, she would have to resign. The result was that, as soon as she finished saying she didn't want to return home, without even having the chance to fully plead her case, her superior's face changed immediately, and they dragged her directly to the CEO's office. Serena Clark felt anxious in her heart, wondering why her business trip had to alarm the CEO. She had heard that foreigners were very meticulous, but this was a bit too meticulous. When she arrived at the office door, she saw a Chinese man negotiating with her CEO with a calm expression. That person, seeing her, even gave her a very natural smile. Serena Clark tried to search through her memory and was completely sure that she had never met this refined-looking Chinese man before. The man smiled at Serena Clark, then pulled out his phone and sent a message to Victor Stone, CEO, the target has been identified, the order has been given, will be completed soon. Victor Stone looked at the short message on his phone, his long, narrow eyes narrowed, and the corner of his mouth lifted. After searching for this woman for so long, she had finally returned to his grasp. Meanwhile, Serena Clark was pulled into the office by her superior. Before she could open her mouth, the superior immediately started reporting. After listening to the report, the CEO felt like he had been hit on the head. Nathan Cole, when initiating the acquisition, had only made one request, that a specific employee be transferred back to her previous position, while promising a series of benefits. Such a simple request, yet issues still arose. Seeing her superior had finished reporting, Serena Clark politely said immediately, "Excuse me, regarding the business trip, CEO, I can only say that I am very sorry. I can't take on this job." Hearing that, the CEO of SEC was stunned for a moment, feeling his eyelids twitch. But he quickly adjusted himself, trying to maintain his composure. This project is very important. You came from Magnolia, which makes you very suitable for this project. I believe that only you can complete it well, so you don't have the right to refuse. The CEO initially intended to pat Serena Clark on the shoulder, but thought better of it, considering that someone might be secretly watching. He withdrew his hand. If there was no other choice, Serena Clark thought for a moment and said, "If that's the case, I will submit my resignation to the HR department immediately." Nathan Cole's face changed suddenly. "Oh my God. Why are you talking about resigning so suddenly?" He was almost scared to death, promptly giving the SEC CEO beside him a firm smack on the shoulder. The CEO was also terrified because if anything happened to the woman that Victor Stone requested, they would all be in deep trouble. The SEC CEO quickly changed his tone. "Regarding the Magnolia project, I believe no one can do better than you. I reviewed your records, and the project suits you very well. At the same time, you can also gain valuable experience." Serena Clark still stood there, unmoved, with rejection clearly visible in her eyes. Nathan Cole, standing beside her, also quickly spoke up, "Once you return to Magnolia, the treatment you'll receive will definitely be better. I think by then you won't regret your current decision." Nathan Cole secretly pinched the SEC CEO, winking urgently. The SEC CEO nodded immediately. "Moreover, the human resources in Magnolia are strictly managed, and you'll have many opportunities for development." In order to take Serena Clark with them, the SEC CEO, a foreigner, almost had no choice but to appeal to ethics and ideals. Serena Clark pondered carefully, weighing the pros and cons, and reluctantly agreed, conditionally, to give it a try. "If I quietly return without getting noticed, it should be okay," she thought. The CEO seemed afraid that she might change her mind, and thus made sure all the procedures went through without delay. The cumbersome processes of a large company were condensed into just one day. The next day, they expedited her return as if they were trying to chase away some bad luck. Although she was very unwilling, Serena Clark still made thorough preparations to work at the SEC branch in Magnolia upon her return. "Miss Tu, correct?" The HR staff smiled gently at Serena Clark. "Please follow me, I will introduce you to your new colleagues." Serena Clark smiled and nodded. Everything seemed harmonious, but she still had a lingering sense of unease. "Let me introduce everyone, this is Serena Clark from the headquarters. From now on, she will be your new colleague. I hope everyone can cooperate well." The HR staff introduced Serena Clark to the others. Serena Clark politely bowed, but suddenly a voice from the corner of the room called out, "Sister." Serena Clark froze in place, looking at the familiar face in front of her, and suddenly wanted to turn around and leave. "Sister, when did you return to the country? Why didn't you tell me anything?" Olivia Clark's face was full of concern, but there was no hint of excitement or worry in her eyes. Inside, she was already experiencing a storm of emotions. She had calculated everything meticulously, even climbed into Charles Harrington's bed, and it had taken so much effort to send that annoying sister abroad. But now, she was already back. Serena Clark had a cold expression, but soon a cold smile appeared on her face. "Olivia Clark, there's no need to pretend in front of me anymore. This kind of fake act, I can't count how many times I got beaten because of it when we were kids. It won't work anymore." Everyone looked at Serena Clark with dissatisfaction. She was just someone sent by headquarters, what was she acting so high and mighty for? "Sis, I know I was wrong before, but this time, I genuinely want to reconcile with you. Please give me another chance." Olivia Clark raised her head, her eyes filled with tears, looking at Serena Clark like a pear blossom bathed in rain. Still pretending. Serena Clark almost suspected that this was a trick that Charles Harrington and Olivia Clark were using together to get back at her. Olivia Clark did not reply, frantically searching for a document and shoving it into Serena Clark's hands. "Here, take this. This is the document I have. It's a big case, very profitable. But I've been busy with personal matters, so I'm passing it on to you. Take it." Olivia Clark was not lying, the document indeed involved a big case. But in reality, this was a tough nut to crack. The company over there was extremely difficult to deal with, and after several quarters, there had been no progress at all. It was considered the hardest, fat meat to chew by the company. In Olivia Clark's mind, her plan was simple. She gave this case to Serena Clark, knowing that with her level, she definitely wouldn't be able to handle it. When the time came, she could report Serena Clark's inefficiency and have her moved to some other place, where she would be out of the way. Perfect. There's no need. A displeased voice came from the corner of the room. "She has already said so, what's with the pretense?" Anyone who doesn't know might think Olivia Clark's sister committed some major mistake. Just someone from headquarters, acting like she's the CEO. So ostentatious, isn't she? Immediately afterward, others began chiming in, almost drenching Serena Clark in complaints. Seeing everyone standing against her, Serena Clark's heart grew colder toward her younger sister. Her White Lotus skills were improving. But she wasn't afraid. At worst, she would be sent back to headquarters, or she could find another job. It's not like she wanted to return to the country anyway. I'm sorry, everyone. Please don't blame my sister. Olivia Clark bowed to everyone, quickly apologized, and pulled Serena Clark into the adjacent office. Now that no one else is here, I'll be honest. The company knows that our family has cooperation with Literati, and they fear I might leak confidential information to Charles Harrington, so they didn't let me handle this case. Even though I really wanted to, I could only painfully give it up. Olivia Clark said, pretending to be regretful. Hearing the name Charles Harrington, Serena Clark's heart slightly ached. She thought she could be indifferent to that scumbag, but unexpectedly, just hearing his name still made her heart sting. Seeing Serena Clark in deep thought, a cold glint flashed in Olivia Clark's eyes. As expected, she still cared about Charles Harrington. Quickly, she resumed her gentle demeanor, softly saying, "You didn't know, did you? Charles was deeply hurt by you. Now we are together, all because of that time. Enough, I don't have time to listen to your love stories." Serena Clark took the documents, flipped through a few pages hastily, and decided to leave. Olivia Clark's lips curled up in satisfaction. Just as Serena Clark was about to turn around, she noticed the news on Olivia Clark's iPad. Olivia Clark was searching for news about Literati's company. The screen displayed news saying that Literati's company was facing a major financial crisis, constantly having to rob Peter to pay Paul. The entire company was in a serious financial crisis, now almost, barely hanging on. Literati's company was desperately seeking outside support, but now it was like a stray dog, and nobody was paying any attention. Serena Clark had been abroad for only a short time, and when she returned, she was worried Charles Harrington would take revenge. Unexpectedly, he had ended up in such a miserable state. Wasn't this what people call karma? Noticing her sister's gaze, Olivia Clark snapped the iPad shut with a loud bang. Have you seen enough? No wonder the noble Clark young lady had to stoop down to work at another company. Turns out it wasn't for experience, but because your boyfriend is about to go bankrupt. Serena Clark blinked her seductive eyes slightly, sarcastically. Such a pity, stolen goods really aren't good to use. It's not what you think. Olivia Clark stubbornly lifted her head. Charles is only facing temporary difficulties. He will find a way. Everything will be fine. Don't you know his abilities? The ability to be a scumbag? Serena Clark smirked disdainfully. You're talking nonsense. I, Olivia Clark, have never misjudged anyone, and I would never stay with a useless person. Olivia Clark shouted fiercely. Her previously innocent, gentle image suddenly collapsed entirely. After speaking, she also realized her slip of the tongue and quickly closed her mouth in fear. Serena Clark rolled her eyes toward the ceiling. She couldn't care less about arguing with Olivia Clark. Whatever happened to them had nothing to do with her. She flung the document in her hand, turned around, and hurried toward St. Virtue Company, as mentioned in the documents. The boss of this company is extremely mysterious, with unclear preferences and a very volatile temper. No matter what methods the company had used, they could never make any progress, not even a little. In fact, many people hadn't even seen his face. Serena Clark suddenly had an idea. If his preferences were unclear, then find a way to understand them. The best way to understand someone's preferences was, follow, spy, and eavesdrop, the 3 steps in a row. Every time there was an appointment, she decided she would sneak in through the side door, gather information about the CEO of St. Virtue Company, and quietly slip out afterward. As luck would have it, just as she got out of the car, Serena Clark hadn't even taken a step before she saw Victor Stone and another man getting out of a car and walking into the company together. That familiar silhouette, plus that tall and unique figure. Victor Stone, good heavens, this company was his. Truly, fate brings enemies together on a narrow road. If he caught her, he would probably peel her alive. Serena Clark resisted the urge to scream to the heavens and quickly hid in a nearby corner. Hey, bro, I heard Serena Clark say you've been crazily chasing after a girl lately. Brandon Stone blurted out. If you've got time for gossip, get your own work done first. Victor Stone gave his brother a cold glance and casually threw a stack of documents into his hands. I'm just asking, won't lose anything, right? What does my future sister-in-law look like? Brandon Stone said with a mischievous smile. A lady of a prestigious family, good background, or perhaps as beautiful as a fairy. So much that she's got you enchanted? A soft breeze blew, bringing along a whiff of a familiar scent from that night, faintly drifting in the air. Victor Stone shook his head with a calm expression, nothing particularly special, but there's a mysterious force about her that drives me nearly insane. I just want to see her again now. All right, as long as you like it. Brandon Stone nodded in disappointment. Oh, by the way, bro, last time that guy with the surname Lawrence said he was giving you that ancient 1,000-year-old jade. He saw you liked it, so he's found another one and said he'll bring it over tomorrow afternoon. The two of them were talking as they walked past the corner where Serena Clark was quietly hiding. Serena Clark shrank herself deeper into the shadows. The two didn't notice her, just enough for her to catch the conversation about the 1,000-year-old jade. Serena Clark gritted her teeth. No matter what had happened between her and Victor Stone in the past, this was her first project since returning to the country, and she absolutely couldn't mess it up. She also couldn't let Olivia Clark look down on her. She raised her phone and aimed the camera at the backs of Victor Stone and Brandon Stone. Hey, Serena is calling for you. No photos allowed here. Don't make me smash your equipment. Serena Clark was startled, scared, and quickly tried to hide to the side, but it was already too late. The security guard rushed over and grabbed her hand. What are you doing? What do you think you're doing here? Sam Prosper, the security guard, asked in a stern voice, I see you look so cute and innocent, but you do something dirty like this. Don't move. If you move again, I'll use my electric baton. Serena Clark was terrified on the inside, but on the outside, she tried to remain calm, making up an excuse as she spoke. I'm not doing anything, just secretly taking photos of the person I like, that's all. The person you like. The security guard almost burst out laughing when he heard that, trying hard to keep a serious face as he continued speaking. Serena Clark tried to recall in her mind, this company should belong to Victor Stone, and the real CEO was the one who was next to him. She cleared her throat, straightened her back, and spoke loudly, isn't it obvious? The person I admire is, of course, the CEO of St. Virtue Group. Brandon Stone heard the noise behind, frowning in annoyance. What's with the young girls nowadays, chasing people all the way to the company? But the long legs of Victor Stone suddenly stopped. That voice, how could he ever forget it? It was the very voice that whispered in his ear that night. Serena Clark. Victor Stone curved his lips, slowly calling out the name. Brandon Stone beside him nearly choked in shock. His icy brother actually smiled. And smiled so tenderly, like a spring breeze. Was this the Yellow River flowing backward, or the Arctic Circle melting? Bro, let me tell you. Brandon Stone reached out to pat Victor Stone on the shoulder, but Victor Stone, with a radiant expression, turned his head and walked straight to find someone. Did I hear you were looking for me? The smiley Victor Stone from earlier was now standing expressionless in front of Serena Clark, looking down at her from above. But the joy in his heart was almost spilling out of his eyes. Brandon Stone stood by, enjoying the show, feeling like his brother was ready to wag his tail from happiness at any moment. The way he instantly returned to being an iceberg was truly an art form. Earlier, just hearing her voice had made him excited, but now he was as cold as ice. Perhaps the little person inside him was doing a ballet dance. Serena Clark was almost on the verge of tears. She had just blurted out something randomly, but Victor Stone had clearly walked far away. Why on earth did he come back? But she absolutely couldn't surrender. Thinking of this, she straightened her back and spoke stubbornly. Who are you? When did I ever say? I was looking for you. Who just said they admired the CEO of St. Virtue Group? Victor Stone casually fiddled with his watch, speaking coldly. Serena Clark felt so embarrassed that she wanted to bang her head against the wall. Getting drunk and sleeping with him was embarrassing enough, but now her made-up confession had also been overheard by him. Serena Clark cast a quick glance to the side, seeing Brandon Stone watching with a look of excitement. Suddenly, an idea flashed in her mind. Serena Clark suddenly stood up straight with confidence, her demeanor changing instantly. Mr. CEO, I'm so sorry, it seems you've misunderstood. What I just said was that I admire your younger brother. Victor Stone and Brandon Stone both looked up at Serena Clark simultaneously. Brandon Stone had a look of shock in his eyes, and he quickly waved at Serena Clark. Jokes have their limits, you can't just say anything like that. I don't know you. Victor Stone ignored his brother, and as his cold gaze swept over Serena Clark, she felt her legs go weak. Serena Clark clenched her small fists, and since the lie had already been told, she would bite her tongue and stick with it until the end. You may not know me, but I know you. Serena Clark gave Brandon Stone a gentle smile, then turned to face Victor Stone without hesitation. So, do you have any more questions? Is it against your company's rules for me to secretly take photos of the person I like? Victor Stone shot a fierce glare at Brandon Stone, raising an eyebrow coldly. Yes. No, brother, let me explain. Brandon Stone was as anxious as a grasshopper, hopping around beside Victor Stone. You better explain every single word clearly. Victor Stone squeezed out each word through clenched teeth, making Brandon Stone feel a chill down his spine. His mind raced, calculating how he could come up with a flawless explanation. Serena Clark wanted to clear her name and get the camera back from Victor Stone. She reached out her hand but then pulled it back, repeating the motion a few times. She quietly weighed in her mind which was more important, the camera or her life. After thinking for a while, she decided to leave the camera and quickly slip away. At this moment, the Stone brothers were battling each other with their eyes. Serena Clark hunched down and sneaked away from the scene of the flashing blades. A heavy pressure surrounded Brandon Stone, he felt that he might not survive the night. Brother, do you trust me or her? I'm your real brother. Brandon Stone grimaced, first playing the family card. Victor Stone responded only with a bland look, effectively discarding that card. All right, it seems you trust that girl more for now. Think about it, brother. I even returned to the country later than you. When you two met, I was still out partying abroad, how could I have known anything? Brandon Stone blinked rapidly, tugging at his brother's sleeve. Victor Stone remained unmoved, coldly brushing his brother's hand away. Then why did she say that? Brother, do you even need to ask? Brandon Stone raised an eyebrow. Clearly, she has a secret crush on you, got caught in the act, and out of panic, she dragged me into it. Victor Stone smirked with his thin lips. Are you sure? Absolutely. I'd swear on it. She doesn't even know who I am, why would she come all the way here looking for me? Are you too? Brandon Stone used his thumb to draw a kiss gesture. Is that it? Even though Victor Stone's expression was cold, Brandon Stone could tell that his brother was suppressing an intense urge to chop him to pieces. Brother, to prove that there is nothing between us, I've decided to help you with something big. Driven by survival instinct, Brandon Stone did everything he could to assist Victor Stone. I will be your love advisor, and I'll make sure you succeed. Victor Stone raised an eyebrow, and before he could say anything, Brandon Stone had already hurriedly called for information. So, she was here for work. Brandon Stone frowned. Their company is really bold, daring to let someone new like her handle this. Someone wants to use this to get rid of her. Victor Stone frowned deeply, calmly analyzing the situation. If it weren't for me, no one could pull this off. Victor Stone guessed that Serena Clark might have encountered a rival at work. Brandon Stone found Serena Clark's information and dialed her number. Hello, is this Serena Clark? Your company wants to cooperate with ours, do you want to discuss it? Victor Stone's angry gaze pierced into Brandon Stone's back, but he continued unfazed. Yes, about the photo-taking incident, we're not going to hold it against you. How about we arrange a meeting to give you the contract? How about tonight at your house? Victor Stone, using his superior height, directly grabbed the phone from his brother's hand. Hello. This is Victor Stone. The other end of the line suddenly froze, and in an instant, the call was hung up. Victor Stone stared at the abruptly disconnected phone, his brows furrowed tightly. On the other end, Serena Clark was still in shock, patting her chest to calm herself down. Is Victor Stone a demon or something? Why does he keep haunting me like a ghost that won't leave? How am I supposed to live like this from now on? By the time she returned to the company, Serena Clark still felt her heart racing, unable to calm down. As she entered the design center, she hadn't even put her bag down before her good little sister approached her once again, feigning concern, and took her hand. Olivia Clark bit her lip and looked at her. Sis, why are you back so soon? Did Saint Virtue give you a hard time? Don't be discouraged, their CEO has always been a bit difficult. Serena Clark let out a cold laugh, cutting her off. Who told you I was given a hard time? Or maybe deep down you're just hoping I was. How could that be, sis? I'm just worried about you. Olivia Clark's meticulously made-up eyes immediately filled with misty tears, as if Serena Clark had inflicted some great injustice upon her. Worried? Serena Clark sneered. Slept with my man, used the time I was abroad to give me the hardest case. Olivia Clark, you really do care about me wholeheartedly, don't you? Serena Clark's cold, powerful demeanor caused a slight shiver in Olivia Clark's heart. She turned her head, saw the surprised looks from the surrounding colleagues, and immediately pinched her own hand to make tears fall. Sis, how could you say that? I know you're angry because Charles and I are together, but you were the one who cheated on him first, hurt him. Olivia Clark tugged on Serena Clark's hand and looked up. Sis, if you're still angry, you can hit me. Go ahead. A resounding slap echoed through the office, and the whole space fell into utter silence. Serena Clark truly was ruthless. Olivia Clark held her burning face, her eyes widening in disbelief. Sis. Seeing the almost blazing anger in Olivia Clark's eyes, Serena Clark still smiled calmly. What? Didn't you tell me to hit you if I wasn't satisfied? Or were you just saying it? Of course not. Olivia Clark lowered her eyes, her gaze cautious. With so many people watching, this humiliation was something she could only silently swallow. She looked up at Serena Clark, her face appearing even more pitiful because of the red slap mark. Sis, if you really can't accept me being with Charles, then I'll break up with him. Olivia Clark, is it because I asked you to break up, so you're breaking up? Or is it because you see Charles Harrington facing retribution, the company about to go bankrupt, and that's why you're breaking up? Serena Clark's sharp eyes stared straight into her face. Are you planning to run to Charles Harrington next for? Going to cry and say that I forced you to break up, so that Charles Harrington would hate me to the bone, right? Olivia Clark's expression immediately changed. She didn't expect her little plan in her heart to be exposed so bluntly by Serena Clark. Her long eyelashes trembled slightly, showing a bit of unease. Her pale, lotus-like face lifted once again. Sis, I really didn't mean that. She shook her head continuously, looking completely wronged. How could I think about leaving him at a time when Charles is facing difficulties? Then absolutely don't leave. I've already wished you two to be infertile yet have many children. Olivia Clarke's gaze immediately turned sharp, but when she saw Serena Clarke with a look of waiting for her reaction, Olivia Clarke could only clench her fists tightly, forcing herself to suppress her anger. She took hold of Serena Clarke's arm. Sis, you hit me already, can you come home for dinner tonight? Dad really missed you while you were away. Surely, when she got home, she would think of 1,000 ways to rip this woman apart. Hearing, Dad, Serena Clarke's heart involuntarily tightened a bit. During the days she was sent abroad, she hadn't received a single phone call or message from her father. And now Olivia Clarke was standing there saying that their father missed her. At this moment, Serena Clarke's heart only felt cold and bitter. No need, just seeing you makes me lose my appetite. Sis. Olivia Clarke still wouldn't give up, running in front of her. Dad was afraid you'd blame him, so he didn't dare contact you. But you know, he has his own difficulties. In fact, he's been ill for some days. Olivia Clarke lowered her eyes, softly sobbing. Ill out of guilt. The cold face of Serena Clarke showed a brief flash of worry. The way she looked at Olivia Clarke also became more complicated. Behind her, the murmurs of their colleagues started spreading. Serena Clarke is really too heartless, breaks up when her boyfriend's in trouble, and now even ignores her sick father. Yeah, her sister has been pleading for so long, and yet she's still so stubborn. Hearing the atmosphere of satisfaction. Olivia Clarke, who had been so indignant a moment ago, secretly curled her lips in triumph. But Serena Clarke completely ignored the voices behind her. Whether she was good or bad, she never cared about other people's opinions. After work, Serena Clarke still showed up in front of the house. After hesitating for a long time, she finally gathered the courage to push the door open. Suddenly, the sound of car brakes squealing came from behind. Serena Clarke turned her head towards the noise. Serena Clarke saw the familiar flashy sports car. Seeing Olivia Clarke step out of the car with her eyes red, arm-linked with Charles Harrington, Serena Clarke gave them a cold glare and chose to ignore them, continuing to walk through the gate. Sister. The full of woe and repugnant voice of Olivia Clarke sounded behind her, making Serena Clarke want to throw up. She didn't want to pay attention, but the fly behind her only got more annoying. Serena Clarke, who allowed you to come back here? Did you get my permission before returning? Before she could even step into the living room, Serena Clarke was blocked by that scumbag Charles Harrington. Serena Clarke looked up coldly. I was sent back by the company. President Harrington, do you have any problem with that? Of course, I do. If you come back, you must notify me. If Olivia hadn't told me, were you planning to keep it a secret? Serena Clarke stopped in resignation. At this moment, looking at Charles Harrington, she felt almost no emotion left. President Harrington, in what capacity are you questioning me? As my brother-in-law? You. Charles Harrington was at a loss for words, his face dark as he stared at Serena Clarke. He hadn't expected her to become this sharp-tongued in just a few days. He grabbed her roughly, pulling her closer. Serena Clarke, don't go too far. Seeing Charles Harrington's expression as if he wanted to strangle Serena Clarke, Olivia Clarke stood behind him, giving Serena Clarke a smug, triumphant smile. The next second, she stepped to Charles Harrington's side, her eyes lifting to look at him pitifully. Charles, even though my sister has done things that hurt you, she just got back, so let's not argue here, all right? Charles Harrington looked down at her, his gaze softening. All right, as you say. Olivia Clarke nodded obediently, resting her head on Charles Harrington's chest, smiling at Serena Clarke. That smile seemed to say, see? This is the difference in Charles Harrington's attitude between us. But that clownish attitude in Serena Clarke's eyes only made her feel more amused. As she stepped inside, Serena Clarke thought she would see her father in a frail state, but instead, he was sitting comfortably with his legs crossed, reading a newspaper and drinking tea. When Robert Clarke looked up and saw her, he immediately stood up from the sofa, face cold as he questioned her, "What are you doing back here? Who let you come back?" Serena Clark smiled self-mockingly, silently blaming herself for falling for Olivia Clark's trap so easily. "The company assigned me," she replied blandly, her gaze cold as she looked at Robert Clark. "I don't care what company assigned you. You get out of here right now and go back to where you came from." "Father." Olivia Clark faked concern as she ran to her father's side, her voice gentle as if trying to help Serena Clark explain, "Sis really was assigned by the company to come back. And even assigned to our company. Now that my sister is back, let her stay." Robert Clark turned to look at his second daughter, noticing that her cheek was a little swollen. He immediately approached her in concern. "Olivia, what happened to your face? Who did this?" "Father, my face." Olivia Clark immediately bit her lip in grievance, her eyes sneaking a glance at Serena Clark. Seeing her father about to step towards Serena Clark, Olivia Clark hurriedly grabbed her father's arm. "I accidentally hit myself, it has nothing to do with my sister." "Really, it wasn't her." Serena Clark laughed coldly. "This fake attitude is really too much." Robert Clark pointed angrily at Serena Clark, "Who let you come back here? On the first day back, you're already bullying your sister. How much longer do you plan to go crazy?" She climbed into her own brother-in-law's bed. "I slapped her, what's wrong with that? Ask Olivia Clark yourself, was it my decision to hit her, or did she ask for it?" Serena Clark looked at them coldly, the chill in her heart growing once more. Since she was young, she had always given in to Olivia Clark, even giving up her fiancé for her. Yet, in the end, her father still always stood by Olivia Clark. Robert Clark furrowed his brow in anger, "Shut your mouth, you wretch." "Father, my sister is right. I was the one who asked her to hit me. I am with Charles, and it's only natural that my sister is upset. Even if she was the one who cheated first, I still understand her feelings." Serena Clark's sharp gaze turned to Olivia Clark. "You think that all the good people should yield to you?" "Sis, I didn't." Olivia Clark shook her head pitifully, tears welling up in her eyes. Serena Clark watched her act, disgust rising as she stepped closer. "Is it necessary to act until everyone thinks you have suffered so much injustice? Should I help you with your performance a bit more?" "Sis." A wave of panic suddenly rose in Olivia Clark's heart. Another resounding slap landed, and Olivia Clark fell to the ground, crying out in pain as tears immediately spilled out. Charles Harrington pulled Serena Clark roughly to the side, shouting in anger, "Serena Clark, what do you think you're doing?" Robert Clark could not bear it any longer, rushing up and delivering a hard slap to Serena Clark, "You beast." A bright red handprint immediately appeared on Serena Clark's face. "Wretched thing, you dare lay hands on your sister." Robert Clark glared at her in fury, his face now filled with intense rage. Serena Clark raised her head in disbelief. Being forced to go abroad was one thing, but now being slapped for this wretched pair was too much. She shook her head in pain, unable to accept it and unable to hide the heartbreak she felt. "She did it on purpose, can't you see?" "Shut up." Robert Clark glared at her in rage. "Your sister has been speaking up for you from start to finish. You still dare to falsely accuse her like this, even raise your hand against her? Do you have any dignity as an older sister?" Faced with her father's misunderstanding, Serena Clark shook with anger, the injustice in her heart overwhelming, yet she couldn't utter a word. Charles Harrington helped Olivia Clark sit down on the sofa. Olivia Clark covered her face, leaning into his embrace. "Everyone, don't blame my sister, it's all my fault. No matter what, being with Charles was my mistake. As long as my sister lets me be with Charles, I am willing to endure anything, to be punished in any way, as long as she forgives me." At that moment, the redness on Olivia Clark's face made her look even more pitiful. Serena Clark let out a cold laugh, looking at Olivia Clark. "You want me to forgive you? Alright, come here. Let me hit you until I truly feel better. Enough. Charles Harrington glared at Serena Clark in fury. Serena Clark, you truly have a heart of stone. You were the one who cheated first, what right do you have to blame others? Serena Clark looked at the man in front of her with cold indifference. It had only been a few days, and his ability to twist the truth had grown considerably. With Olivia Clark, they truly made a match made in hell. Seeing Charles Harrington standing up for her, a flash of satisfaction crossed Olivia Clark's mind. However, her face only showed more remorse. She reached out, holding on to Charles Harrington's arm, looking up toward Serena Clark. Sis, it is truly all my fault. Please, don't blame Charles anymore. I loved the wrong person, it's because I loved him too much that I made these mistakes. Charles Harrington lowered his head, looking at the pitiful woman in his arms, his eyes filled with sympathy. Olivia, it's not your fault. Without you, how would I have seen just how vile this woman could be? Serena Clark looked at the pair in front of her, feeling utterly disgusted. She didn't want to look at them for another second and turned away coldly. These free performances are truly revolting. If this house does not welcome me, then I will leave. You are not going anywhere. Robert Clark yelled in fury, go and apologize to your sister. Serena Clark frowned deeply, pointing at the deceitful woman sitting on the sofa. You want me to apologize to her? Let me tell you, that will never happen. Oh my God, how did I end up with such a shameless daughter like you? You were the one who cheated, and now you blame everything on your sister. If Olivia Clark hadn't won back Charles's heart, the Clark family would have been ruined. Serena Clark smirked coldly and bitterly. Yes, Olivia Clark is the good daughter. To get herself a rich man, she was willing to use any means, even seducing her own brother-in-law. Even her own sister, she could betray. For Olivia Clark, Serena Clark had nothing left to say. Not being born of the same mother, at most, she could just ignore it. But as for her biological father, Serena Clark truly didn't want to say another word. She walked straight ahead, her high heels clacking loudly on the floor, not looking back. Behind her, Robert Clark leaned on the sofa, his face flushed red with rage. He pointed directly at Serena Clark. Go back abroad. Never come back here again. Well, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. My affairs are none of your business. You are truly ungrateful. If you dare stay in this country, I will publish all your shameful deeds on the company's website. Robert Clark glared at her angrily, pointing at her as he shouted. Hearing her father say this, Olivia Clark, who was still crying into Charles Harrington's chest, let out a sly smile to herself. If you're not afraid of disgracing yourself, go ahead, Serena Clark said, and quickly walked out the door. Charles Harrington saw that Serena Clark was about to leave, so he withdrew his arm from Olivia Clark's grasp. Seeing this, Olivia Clark immediately grabbed his arm, her eyes teary. Charles, are you going to chase after my sister? I need to talk to her. Charles Harrington looked down at her, impatience flickering in his eyes. Then go quickly and come back, I'm a little scared. All right. Watching Charles Harrington's cold face as he chased after Serena Clark, Olivia Clark smiled wickedly to herself. Serena Clark, let's see how Charles teaches you a lesson. Stop right there. Serena Clark had just stepped out the door when Charles Harrington blocked her path. What do you want? Serena Clark glanced at him with disdain, her voice icy. You don't want to go back abroad, do you? I can give you a chance. As long as you apologize to me and promise not to get involved with any shady men again, I might consider talking to your father to let you stay. Hearing this, Serena Clark sneered. She truly wondered what Charles Harrington's brain was made of that he could shamelessly say such words. Charles Harrington, you slept with Olivia Clark, and now you expect me to apologize? Could you be any more shameless? Charles Harrington's face changed, looking at her with displeasure. That wasn't entirely my fault. I'm a normal man, and you wouldn't even let me touch you. Do you think you're some kind of virtuous maiden? Such a noble excuse. In reality, I was the one at fault. Serena Clark looked at the man in front of her, only feeling that he had become even more shameless. Charles Harrington, I must have been blind to ever fall in love with you. You truly disgust me. So you think you're so much better? Charles Harrington grabbed her arm tightly. Look at yourself back in that bar, what are you pretending? Serena Clark, if you just act like your sister and spend one night with me, I promise I'll let go of everything that happened before and never bring it up again. In your dreams. Serena Clark looked at him with determination, her gaze filled with defiance. You could sleep with someone else, so why can't I refuse to sleep with you? Serena Clark tried to pull her hand out of Charles Harrington's grip, but realized he only held tighter. Charles Harrington, you're truly shameless. Shameless? Alright, let me show you what real shamelessness is. With that, Charles Harrington tightened his grip on her arm, pushing her back while his lips moved closer to hers. Serena Clark looked at him, her stomach turning with disgust. Let me go. Serena Clark pushed and shoved, but his strength overwhelmed her. Seeing that he was about to kiss her, she raised her voice, Charles Harrington, I'm warning you, right now I am the girlfriend of Victor Stone, the CEO of Saint Virtue. You better think carefully, if you touch me, what will be the consequence? Charles Harrington's face froze, then he frowned. What did you say? You're Victor Stone's girlfriend. Ha ha ha. He let out a mocking laugh. Why not just say you're his wife too? Serena Clark stared back at him calmly but angrily. Believe it or not, it's up to you. If you don't believe me today, don't blame me for not warning you. Meanwhile, in the limited edition Rolls-Royce Ghost, a smile appeared on the sharp face of Victor Stone. Hearing the words, "That is my man," Brandon Stone initially turned to see his brother's reaction, but as soon as he did, his mouth dropped open in surprise. In almost 30 years, I've never seen my brother smile like this. Brandon Stone exclaimed, "Brother, are you okay?" Victor Stone immediately turned cold-faced. Are you hoping something is wrong with me? Oh, no, 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 of course not. Brandon Stone quickly shook his head with an awkward smile. It's just that I've never seen you smile so brightly. You know, right now you look just like someone in love for the first time. Feeling his brother's cold gaze, Brandon Stone immediately shut his mouth. Victor Stone glared at him briefly before turning his head, his gaze once again falling on the two people standing at the door. You're saying Victor Stone is your man? Who are you fooling? Charles Harrington frowned in displeasure, his eyes fixed on Serena Clark's face. Do you really think you're some sort of wealthy heiress, the #1 socialite? Do you think Victor Stone would look at you? Is CEO Stone blind? I've sent you the photos, can't you see? Charles Harrington frowned deeply, quickly pulling his phone from his pocket and opening WeChat. Victor Stone with a determined expression appeared right before Charles Harrington. His resolute eyes still refused to accept defeat. That was impossible. In Charles Harrington's eyes, a trace of panic flashed by. That day, he only noticed that Victor Stone was close to a man but didn't realize who the man was. However, now, along with a series of troubles Harrington Corp has faced recently. While he was lost in thought, Serena Clark jerked her arm forcefully, shaking off Charles Harrington's hand and looking at him with a proud gaze. If you don't believe me, feel free to come here and cause me trouble. But as for Victor Stone's strength, I think you know very well. I wonder if Harrington Corp will still exist tomorrow when I go back tonight and tell him that my ex-boyfriend is harassing me. Charles Harrington pointed his finger at her, but he hesitated and didn't dare to speak. After a moment, he forced himself to calm down and said, Serena Clark, don't think that just by bringing up Stone, I will fear you. I am giving you a chance to reconsider. Don't make me disgusted. He turned away with a stern expression. Serena Clark exhaled deeply, patting her chest. Oh my God, I wonder if one day Victor Stone finds out how good I am at making up stories. whether he will kill me right away. Across from her, a voice calling, "Honey," made Victor Stone in the car beam with delight, his eyebrows almost shooting up to the sky. Brandon Stone shook his head and sighed, "Is it really necessary?" Seeing Charles Harrington's figure disappear, Brandon Stone asked the man next to him, "Hey bro, that guy Harrington has left, do we need to pick up your little lover?" "No need, I'm afraid she'll feel awkward." "Let's go." Oh my God, since when did my brother become so considerate? Dear listeners, today's broadcast has come to an end. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and comment below. Tune in to The Domineering Husband Chasing Love, produced by Zaya Shengdian Media, a novel by Thin the Bok Tai, narrated by Tay Noyet Veen Vong, and post-production by Ton Y. The next morning, Charles Harrington was leisurely enjoying his tea in the office when his secretary barged in with a stack of documents, flustered. "Mr. Harrington, it's not good." Charles Harrington's face darkened. "What's the matter that you don't know how to knock?" "Sorry, Mr. Harrington, it's about work. All the contracts with Harrington Corp have been cancelled, including the most important ZC project recently." "What?" Charles Harrington stood up with a loud bang. "What else? Don't leave me hanging." The secretary stammered and continued, "They warned you not to appear in front of Serena Clark again. If you keep pestering her, they will consider it a provocation." A cup shattered into pieces on the floor. Charles Harrington stared fiercely, his eyes flashing with hatred, recalling what Serena Clark said to him yesterday. So it was all true. This woman really got together with Victor Stone. Great, really amazing. Serena Clark is truly impressive. The secretary saw that the general manager was fuming, and she stood beside him, not daring to even take a deep breath. She hesitated, unsure whether to say something to ease the atmosphere, when she heard him roar again, "What are you still standing here for?" She shivered slightly and softly asked, "Mr. Harrington, what should we do about the contract?" "What to do? What to do? Every day you only know how to ask me what to do. You can't even handle the smallest tasks by yourself. Why am I even paying you all?" Charles Harrington was livid, waving his hand, "Send someone to beg Victor Stone for mercy, right now. We can't afford any more problems, none whatsoever. Now hurry up and get out of here." Yes, got it, Mr. Harrington. I'll go right away." After chasing the secretary away, Charles Harrington panted heavily, the fury in his eyes making him appear somewhat ferocious. Serena Clark, that bold woman actually dared to dump me? Who does she think she is? Does she think that just because she's clinging to the Stone family, she can escape from my grasp? Does she not remember who was the one who loved her deeply, who smiled at her every day? Just because of a little incident, she forgot all the promises we made before. Are all women so fickle? Charles Harrington clenched his fist, his knuckles showing clearly. He closed his eyes, trying to suppress the fury that roared within him. But no matter how much he tried, the anger grew stronger. Impossible, I can't let this be found out. With that thought, Charles Harrington grabbed his coat, slammed the door, and left. After work, Olivia Clark called Charles Harrington several times, but no one answered. The more she thought about it, the more she felt something was off. She was sure Serena Clark must have said something to Charles Harrington. If not for her interference, why would Charles Harrington be so cold today? Something wasn't right. Olivia Clark was always cautious about matters like this, so as soon as she felt a hint of suspicion, her eyes instinctively followed Serena Clark when she was about to leave the office. Then she quietly followed her out of the company. On the way, Serena Clark drove her car with her mind full of thoughts. What happened yesterday made her restless all day today, and she almost made a mistake at work. Fortunately, her supervisor was kind to her and didn't hold it against her. This made her realize that she was really not in the right state. For a scumbag like that, she didn't need to make herself suffer. Serena Clark adjusted her mindset and, after passing several traffic lights, her car finally reached the apartment complex. But just before she could park, she noticed a familiar car. Olivia Clark, what is she doing here again? Serena Clark slammed the brakes, and the car behind her also came to a halt. Olivia Clark stepped out of the driver's seat, wearing high heels. A few steps forward to block her path. Serena Clark, with a displeased expression, pushed open the car door and stepped out, her tone filled with anger. You dare follow me again? Haven't you had enough of getting beaten? Olivia Clark rolled her eyes at her in disdain. When no one else was around, she didn't even bother pretending to look pitiful. I came here to find Charles Harrington. Where are you hiding him? Serena Clark heard that and sneered. How should I know where he is? Does your boyfriend need me to keep track of him for you? Or are you so pathetic now that you don't even know where your man is going, and you need to come here to ask me? That's really amusing. No matter how tightly I keep an eye on him, I can't stop a vixen from trying to seduce him. Anyway, you already know, some women just love to cling. Cling? Sis, are you talking about yourself? Serena Clark didn't even take her words seriously. On the contrary, she felt more comfortable now that both of them had torn off their masks and didn't need to pretend anymore. Olivia Clark exploded in anger. You despicable woman. Who do you think you're insulting? Who am I insulting? You said you were clinging, I didn't say that about you. Why are you so worked up? Serena Clark calmly retorted. Olivia Clark pointed directly at her face, her expression twisted in fury. I warn you. Since you've already been dumped, stay in your place as the abandoned woman you are. Don't think you can use any tricks to steal my man from me. Charles Harrington is mine. Serena Clark laughed coldly in disdain. Sure, he's yours, I have no interest in fighting for him. After all, to me now, he's worth less than a piece of garbage. You two really deserve each other, you're truly a match made in heaven. Who are you insulting? Go ahead, try insulting me again if you dare. Serena Clark looked her straight in the eyes, emphasizing every word. Listen carefully, I said in my eyes, you two are a perfect match, both stink alike. Serena Clark's words made Olivia Clark furious and humiliated. She couldn't help but scream, get out. Get as far away as possible, and best never come back. Serena Clark smirked, sorry, but it seems this is my apartment, not your home. If anyone should leave, it should be you, not me. Olivia Clark trembled with rage, raising her hand intending to slap her. Seeing this, Serena Clark grabbed her wrist and pushed her away. If you want to throw a tantrum, go home and do it. This isn't the place for you to mess around. You. Olivia Clark pointed her finger at her in anger, but Serena Clark didn't even bother to pay attention, turning around and walking away. Not willing to let it go, Olivia Clark rushed up again to grab her. You despicable woman. Hurry up. Olivia Clark hadn't even finished speaking when her phone rang. One hand held onto Serena Clark, and with the other, she pulled out her phone. Seeing that it was her best friend calling, she pressed decline. But before she could put the phone away, a multimedia message popped up. It was a photo of Charles Harrington hugging another woman while drinking at a bar. The picture showed up clearly on the screen. And Serena Clark, who had been trying to shake off Olivia Clark and leave, also accidentally caught sight of the photo. Olivia Clark's face immediately turned unpleasant. She quickly put the phone back in her pocket, trying to hide the awkwardness on her face. Next time, I'll come and settle the score with you. Serena Clark dusted off her sleeve, giving her a mocking smile. What's wrong? The man you couldn't keep is now at a bar flirting with someone else, isn't he? What does that have to do with you? Who was it just now saying that Charles Harrington was yours? I think it was you, right? How come just a moment later, he's someone else's already? You two really can't keep your stink together for long, can you? Shut up. Our business is none of your concern. Olivia Clark no longer had the heart to argue. From the moment she saw the photo, her mind was filled with the image of that woman nestling into Charles Harrington. Damn vixen, just wait until I go deal with them now. After saying that, she paid no attention to Serena Clark's taunts, turned around, and quickly returned to her car, stepping on the gas and speeding away. Charles Harrington, what the hell are you doing here? Olivia Clark had just stepped into the bar and immediately saw the conspicuous couple. She stormed over, forcefully pushing their hands apart. Charles Harrington heard the commotion, turned around, and shoved the heavily made-up woman out of his embrace, instead grabbing Olivia Clark's arm. It hurts. Olivia Clark gasped in pain. You still have the face to come here. If you have the guts, take the hit. Why won't you beg me? Why are you with another man? Charles Harrington had clearly drunk too much. He mistook Olivia Clark for Serena Clark, mumbling drunken words. Upon hearing this, Olivia Clark's anger boiled over, turning into a wild jealousy. Serena Clark, it's always Serena Clark. Even when he's drunk, he still thinks about that damned woman. Olivia Clark clenched her hands tightly, her teeth gritting as her pale, delicate palm showed deep nail marks. She forced herself to stay calm, lowering her voice as she responded, Charles, it's me, Olivia Clark. You've drunk too much. Come, let's go home. You're Olivia. Charles Harrington mumbled, letting go of her hand. Just that small action was enough to plant yet another seed of hatred in Olivia Clark's heart. Charles Harrington raised his glass, pulling her closer, hey, have a few drinks with me. As he spoke, Charles Harrington's alcohol-laden breath blew onto Olivia Clark's face, the strong smell of liquor making her uncomfortable, but she couldn't show it. She picked up her glass and drank it all in one gulp, forcing a strained smile. What's wrong with you today? Are you in a bad mood? If you wanted to go out drinking, why didn't you tell me? Why go looking for someone else? Why am I in a bad mood, you still don't know? Serena Clark put a huge green hat on my head. Charles Harrington stood up, swaying, and raised his hand over his head, making a circular motion as if indicating a hat. Olivia Clark appeared upset. Hasn't that matter already passed? Why do you keep bringing it up? Charles Harrington slumped onto the bar, placing his glass down heavily. The atmosphere suddenly became gloomy. Did you know, today the company cancelled all the contracts with Harrington Corporation. He is helping some other man to ruin me. How could this happen? Olivia Clark was shocked, tightly grabbing Charles Harrington's arm, asking urgently, Charles, what did you say to her yesterday? Why did she suddenly go after you like this? And also, how could she find a man with that kind of power? Charles Harrington turned his head away. He certainly wouldn't mention wanting to sleep with Serena Clark. But just thinking of the man she mentioned made Charles Harrington so angry that he gritted his teeth. She's involved with Victor Stone now. Stone who? Victor Stone, the CEO of St. Virtue Group. No way. Olivia Clark was stunned, her eyes showing a flash of panic. There's no way she found a man better than me. Absolutely not. I can't let that happen. Charles Harrington laughed bitterly and spoke, I don't believe it either. But just today, the company cancelled all the contracts with Harrington Corporation. They even sent someone to warn me to stay away from Serena Clark. That can't be true. What else could it be? Feeling Charles Harrington's concern, Olivia Clark clenched her fists, her voice filled with worry. Charles, that's St. Virtue Group. If we really offend them, what are we going to do? I don't know how she managed to get into Victor Stone's bed. Probably, that wretched woman would do anything. I can't let her get away with this. Betraying me and then just walking away like that. Now she's even clinging to St. Virtue Group. No way. I must make Victor Stone see her true colors. Charles Harrington clenched his fist tightly, angrily slamming it down on the table. Olivia Clarke slightly lifted her lips, secretly feeling triumphant. She raised her head, wrapping her arms around Charles Harrington's shoulders, and spoke softly with an affectionate tone, "Darling, don't be angry anymore. Let's go home, okay? If it comes to that, I will go apologize to my sister, ask her to talk to Victor Stone to stop targeting you." "Humph, I don't need her so-called kindness. I want to see Victor Stone dump her, so she has to come begging me to sleep with her." The next day, at home. "What? Your sister is with Victor Stone, the CEO of St. Virtue Group?" Robert Clark looked at Olivia Clarke, his eyes full of shock. "Dad, why would I lie to you? Do you still remember the photo that Charles Harrington brought back earlier? The one hugging my sister is Victor Stone." Robert Clark silently turned his head, thinking, that girl Serena Clarke has really managed to climb high. Seeing her father's reaction, Olivia Clarke immediately understood his thoughts and quickly spoke with an aggrieved expression, "Dad, I know you think that my sister has found a better support, and that's a good thing. But, do you know what she has done with Victor Stone?" Robert Clark frowned. "What do you mean?" "Dad, Charles said that Victor Stone has cancelled all the contracts with Harrington Corporation. I know my sister is still mad at me, but the truth is that he cheated first. Now she's treating Charles like this. If Charles's business collapses, what am I supposed to do? Besides, Dad, think about it. With a family like the Stone family, can my sister really get in? If Victor Stone is just playing around, what will happen to our family when that time comes?" "What?" Robert Clark slammed the table in anger. "She's really gone too far, climbing high and forgetting who she is. Daring to side with outsiders against her own family." Seeing that her father believed her, Olivia Clarke continued to act worried, adding more fuel to the fire. "Dad, what are we going to do now? My sister doesn't even care about you anymore. You sent her abroad for Charles, but if she tells Victor Stone to go against our family, then—" Robert Clark's face immediately darkened even more. Would she dare? "No matter what, I am still her father. To dare to help outsiders go against me, she must have lost her mind." His voice was filled with determination. But deep down, at this very moment, Robert Clark felt a sense of unease. Olivia Clarke saw her father's expression becoming heavy and hesitated before speaking again. "Dad, I also heard that the relationship between Serena Clarke and Victor Stone, it's because of what, Dad?" "I only heard it, and it might not even be true. Actually, she drugged Victor Stone, and that's how they ended up together." Olivia Clarke bit her lip, her face full of hesitation. After hearing this, Robert Clark was so furious that he flipped the table. How could she be so shameless? Doing something like that, she has truly disgraced the Clark family. Seeing her father so angry, Olivia Clarke slightly curled her lips, feeling a surge of joy inside. "Dad, please don't get too angry. Right now, the most important thing is that we can't let my sister continue being with Victor Stone. If not, one wrong step will lead to everything going wrong. There are no secrets that never get out. If one day Victor Stone finds out the truth, how will he treat her? And what will he do to our family?" Hearing this, Robert Clark's face became even more serious, and he nodded in agreement. "You're right, we absolutely can't let them be together." The next day, early morning. Serena Clarke stepped into the company like every other day, wearing her high heels. But just as she sat at her desk, she was called to the leadership office. "Sister, why are you late today? Still not familiar with the roads? Or got stuck in traffic?" The sweet voice of Olivia Clarke made Serena Clarke feel annoyed. Serena Clarke glanced at her coldly, showing no mercy as she retorted, "Didn't want to feel nauseous early in the morning, so I had to eat properly before coming." "Sister." Olivia Clarke's eyes instantly filled with grievance. Serena Clarke really didn't want to see that fake appearance, so she said nothing further and directly sat down at her place. Ignored completely by her sister, Olivia Clarke felt rage burning inside and had already cursed Serena Clarke 1,000 times in her mind. Looking up, seeing the executive director, Olivia Clarke immediately put on a gentle smile, offering the document in her hand. The director opened the first document and looked at Serena Clarke with a serious expression. "How is the TW project progressing?" Serena Clarke frowned slightly, feeling somewhat guilty. "There hasn't been any progress yet. But I will do my best to complete it. You can rest assured, Director." Olivia Clarke, sitting opposite, shot a cold glance at Serena Clarke, then immediately interjected with a fake smile, "Director, after all, she's someone sent from the head office, surely you have to believe in her abilities. She will definitely be able to complete this project." Serena Clarke gave a cold smile. This was clearly pushing her into a difficult situation. But at this moment, she certainly couldn't let Olivia Clarke see her fail. Serena Clarke smiled slightly, narrowing her eyes at Olivia Clarke with disdain. "You're right. I definitely won't be like some people who, when they can't handle it, push it away and pretend to be kindly giving it to others." Serena Clarke had never tolerated Olivia Clarke's fake act, but in the company, the others didn't understand the real situation, and they couldn't help but start whispering among themselves. Serena Clarke spoke with a tone full of sarcasm, making everyone in the company feel great sympathy for Olivia Clarke. "Sister. I really didn't mean it that way. I truly believe that you have the ability and also need this project to prove your capability." Olivia Clarke bit her lip, her voice becoming choked with emotion. "All right, no more arguments. Since the project has been assigned to Serena Clarke, there should be no problem. Serena Clarke, do your best to complete it as soon as possible. Today's meeting ends here. Dismissed." The director stood up, gently easing the tense atmosphere. Leaving the office, Olivia Clarke saw that there was no one around and reached out to stop Serena Clarke. "You sounded so confident, it seems like you're certain you can finish this project." Serena Clarke smiled naturally. "You have so much faith in me, if I don't complete it, wouldn't that disappoint you?" The look on Olivia Clarke's face immediately turned ugly. "Don't think that just because you've managed to deal with Victor Stone, you can handle this project. Victor Stone is very serious about work." "Is that so? You seem to know my boyfriend quite well." Serena Clarke smirked, appearing completely unconcerned. "You. Humph." Olivia Clarke glared at her, furious. "Do you really think Victor Stone would consider you his only girlfriend? You should weigh your own worth. With someone like you, who already had a fiancé, there's no way you'll ever step foot into the Stone family's door. Just wait until Victor Stone dumps you. I want to see if you still dare to be as arrogant as today." Serena Clarke deliberately drew out her mocking tone. "Before I get dumped, I'll make sure he deals with Charles Harrington once and for all." "You." Olivia Clarke's face turned purple with rage, but just at that moment, another colleague walked by. She could only swallow her anger and put on a sweet smile. "Sister, make sure you do your best." Serena Clarke returned to the break room, made herself a cup of rich, fragrant coffee, and sighed, "Why was I so foolish to say I'd complete it by the end of the month? Truly just making life harder for myself." She patted her head lightly, regretting her own stupidity. But now, with the arrow already on the bow, there was no turning back. Afternoon. Serena Clarke once again arrived in front of the Stone Group building. She looked up at the towering skyscraper reaching into the clouds, then pretended to be calm as she walked in. Unfortunately, it was of no use. She still wasn't treated like a VIP, and instead was immediately stopped by the receptionist. "Is there anything I can help you with?" Serena Clarke smiled awkwardly and said, "I'd like to see Victor Stone. I want to meet with General Director Stone." The receptionist looked Serena Clarke up and down, politely asking, "Excuse me, do you have an appointment?" "No, but I have something urgent to discuss with him." "I'm sorry, but without an appointment, you cannot go in." The receptionist's tone immediately turned cold. Serena Clark saw this but still forced a smile, continuing to speak to the receptionist. I'm a friend of Director Stone. I really have urgent business with him. Miss, every day, there are a lot of people who come here, claiming to be friends of Director Stone. If it's not 100, then it's at least 50. Some things I think I don't need to say again. The receptionist glanced at her arrogantly, clearly annoyed. You don't believe me, right? I have a picture with Victor Stone here. Saying that, Serena Clark took out her phone and showed the photo she had taken with Victor Stone that day when they were drunk. Upon seeing the photo, the receptionist was so shocked that her jaw nearly dropped. This was the first time she had seen Director Stone be so close to a woman. However, upon closer inspection, Victor Stone's expression looked a bit strange. With her professionalism, the receptionist quickly managed her expression. Miss, please understand. According to the company's regulations, without an appointment, entry is not permitted. After saying that, she waved for the security guard to come over. Serena Clark's heart tightened. She hadn't expected that even a photo would be useless. If politeness didn't work, then she would have to go with a more forceful approach. Taking advantage of the moment before the security arrived, she lifted her foot and tried to rush inside. Unfortunately, the security team of Stone Group wasn't easy to deal with either. Serena Clark had barely taken a few steps before being dragged outside. Serena Clark put her hands together, her face full of sincerity. Please, Mr. Security, give me a break. I really have urgent business with your director. No, there's a rule, please don't make things difficult for us. Serena Clark started to become anxious. I have something very important. If it's delayed, will you be able to bear the responsibility? Hearing this, the security guard laughed out loud. You're just trying to climb higher, what kind of important thing could it be? Move quickly, or we'll call the police. The large door closed with a bang, leaving Serena Clark to hang her head. If this didn't work, then nothing would. Serena Clark turned her head, glaring angrily at those people, her face filled with frustration. She tugged at her hair. Initially planning to give up, but suddenly she saw a janitor at the corner of the building, wearing Stone Group's cleaning uniform and collecting trash. A new idea instantly popped into her mind. Auntie, I'm an intern here. I got fired yesterday and, unfortunately, forgot the necklace my mom gave me. Now I don't have an employee card, so I can't get in. Can you help me, please? Serena Clark whimpered, wiping away her tears as if she were truly pitiful. Don't cry anymore, dear. I'm just a janitor, how could I help you here? The janitor felt pity for Serena Clark, but her face still carried a troubled expression. Serena Clark bit her lip, took a deep breath, and her voice was still sniffling. Auntie, could you lend me your uniform for just a little while? I'll give it back as soon as I'm done. This. The janitor looked at Serena Clark, full of hesitation. This is the Stone Group building. If something goes wrong. Seeing the aunt looking conflicted, Serena Clark was about to kneel down. Fortunately, the janitor quickly held her up. Girl, what are you doing? This necklace is the only thing my mother left me. Serena Clark looked sorrowful, continuing her act of distress. The janitor saw the girl's sad look and thought of her own daughter, who was about the same age. She couldn't help feeling a pang of sympathy. The janitor sighed, and in the end decided to help. All right then, go in. But you must be careful. You know the company rules, if anything happens, Serena Clark immediately gave a beaming smile, emotionally grabbing her auntie's hands. Don't worry, I promise there won't be any problems. Once she got inside the employee access route, Serena Clark began inquiring about the location of the CEO's office. However, her small and sneaky appearance had already caught the eye of Victor Stone. Brandon Stone looked up and saw his older brother, who usually had an icy expression, now smiling. Brother, what are you thinking about that's making you so happy? Victor Stone looked at the small figure in the distance, the corner of his mouth curling with interest. Then he turned back, coldly instructing, wait here for me for a moment. All right. Brandon Stone looked puzzled, but nodded in agreement. Victor Stone quickly stepped into his office, waved for the secretary to come in. If anyone asks about the location of the CEO's office, just intentionally reveal it. What? The secretary opened his mouth in shock. Intentionally reveal it? Why? But he dared not ask further because it was an order from the CEO. With the CEO's order, everyone in the company started deliberately letting the young and suspicious janitor make her way to the CEO's office. Thus, Serena Clark easily stood in front of the CEO's office door. It must be fate helping me. Serena Clark triumphantly looked at the sign, CEO's office, on the door. She looked around to make sure there was no one, took a deep breath, and then knocked lightly twice on the door. Come in. A cold, powerful voice rang out, making Serena Clark a little nervous. But to get the project, she had no choice but to muster up her courage, put her mask back on, and push the door open. When she turned around to put her belongings down, she was surprised to see Brandon Stone there too. To avoid being exposed, Serena Clark had to temporarily hide her identity. Hello director, I'm here to clean. She hurried to the corner of the room, picked up a cloth, and started wiping. As she worked, she thought about how to start her first sentence. Victor Stone sat in the director's chair, leisurely watching her small figure without a word, but his eyes carried a smile. The dressing room, my brother just spilled some hairspray on the floor, go in there and clean it. Brandon Stone looked at Serena Clark and casually ordered. Serena Clark sighed internally and rolled her eyes. Do they really think of me as just a janitor? Have they ever seen such a beautiful janitor? But she still had to pick up the water bucket and step into the dressing room. Because of her nervousness, she clumsily cleaned, almost tripping. Clean the fish tank as well. The lazy voice of Brandon Stone echoed again. Clean the fish tank. Serena Clark had no idea how to clean a fish tank. This spoiled brat is really hard to serve. In her mind, she cursed Brandon Stone 1,000 times, but in reality, she still had to nervously follow his orders. Make 2 cups of coffee, and by the way, scrub the toilet too. Brandon Stone lay comfortably on the sofa reading a newspaper, occasionally looking up. Every time he saw Serena Clark finish a janitor's task, he would give a new order. After completing a series of tasks, Serena Clark was nearly rolling her eyes from exhaustion, while the director still sat there seriously working. However, from time to time, his gaze would glance at Serena Clark with an amused look. He seemed to enjoy Brandon Stone constantly directing and bothering her. It seems like the bathroom drain needs to be unclogged. Serena Clark clenched her fists, even wanting to hit someone. She angrily walked toward the bathroom when she heard Victor Stone's cold voice, no need anymore. She immediately turned back, her eyes full of gratitude, winking towards Victor Stone. There's my savior. Victor Stone randomly tossed the documents he was holding onto the table, his eyes coldly looking at Brandon Stone. Leave the room. After Brandon Stone left, Serena Clark finally sighed in relief. Serena Clark took off her mask, placed down the cleaning cloth, and approached the director's desk. Hello, Director Stone, I am Serena Clark, a representative from SEC. I deeply apologize for having to enter your company in this manner, but the management here is very strict, and I had no other way. I sincerely apologize. A representative from SEC? Victor Stone raised an eyebrow, looking at her with interest. Yes, I'm here to discuss cooperation. And? Serena Clark bit her lip. I want to ask you, was it really you who cancelled the contract with Harrington Corp? Victor Stone's gaze immediately became cold, and his voice also carried indifference. Did you come here just for Harrington Corp? Not entirely, Serena Clark shook her head. I just don't understand. After all, you suddenly made such a big move against Harrington Corp. My company doesn't need to report its decisions to you. Victor Stone coldly interrupted her. Serena Clark choked up, her face stiffened. She clearly sensed Victor Stone's anger, and hurriedly explained, "Mr. Stone, I don't mean to interfere in your company's operations. Because of the matter between me and Charles Harrington." But she didn't know how to continue. This awkward scene fell into Victor Stone's eyes, and it seemed like she was here to question him about Charles Harrington. "In fact, I think, although Director Harrington isn't a good person, the employees of Harrington Corp are innocent. If Harrington Corp were to collapse suddenly like this..." "Enough." Victor Stone forcefully threw the pen he was holding onto the table, his voice full of anger. "Who gave you the right to criticize my decisions?" Serena Clark was startled by his coldness. She knew Victor Stone was decisive and difficult to talk to, but she had never seen him this cold. Victor Stone stood up, pressed a button to call security from the phone on the desk. "Call security in here." "No, no, no." Serena Clark panicked, running to grab his arm, looking directly at Victor Stone, trying to suppress her anxiety. "Mr. Stone, if you really don't want to discuss this, then we won't talk about it. Actually, I came primarily for CC, it's just..." Before she could finish, the door to the director's office was knocked. The two security guards from before, who had dragged her out, entered, looking at each other with fear, nervously bowing in apology. "Director, we're very sorry, it was our negligence. We really didn't see this lady. Take her out." "Yes, sir." The two security guards immediately stepped next to Serena Clark, looking at her seriously. "Please come with us." Serena Clark unwillingly looked at Victor Stone. "Mr. Stone, please don't be angry, our company sincerely has a lot of goodwill. Please take a look at our plan, please consider it." But all in vain. Serena Clark was still unceremoniously expelled from the building. She adjusted her clothes, looked up at the towering office, her small face filled with frustration. "Victor Stone, after all, you were someone who once slept with me, yet you are so heartless." Serena Clark turned, walked across the street, and bought a cup of milk tea. Sitting in the chair, Victor Stone lightly punched his shoulder, his eyes still fixed on the building opposite. He lowered his head, let out a sigh, his heart filled with worry about handling the case. The atmosphere in Victor Stone's office was tense, even the secretary bringing coffee in shivered slightly upon entering. At this moment, the entire building seemed to sense that Victor Stone was not in a good mood. With a cold voice, Victor Stone pressed the intercom button on his desk. "Tell Brandon Stone to come to my office." Feeling the sharpness from Victor Stone, the secretary quickly nodded. "Yes, Director, I will go immediately." After hanging up, the secretary sighed, silently praying for Brandon Stone. The sound of knocking echoed. Victor Stone lifted his deep eyes. "Come in." Brandon Stone pushed the door open and shivered when he felt the coldness enveloping the room. Seeing the dark face of his older brother, he cautiously approached. "Brother, did you call for me?" Victor Stone pointed at the pile of documents on the desk, his voice ice-cold without a trace of warmth. "Check all these invoices." "Check invoices?" Brandon Stone widened his eyes in surprise. "Isn't this the finance department's job? Why is it on me? Where is our finance team?" Victor Stone's sharp gaze suddenly lifted. "I give you work, and you have many complaints." Feeling his brother's anger, Brandon Stone quickly shook his head. No, brother, it's just. I still have several projects unfinished. I haven't had a good sleep for days." Although he didn't know what had made his brother so angry, Brandon Stone clearly didn't dare argue. Victor Stone leaned back, gently turning the ring on his pinky finger, looking at Brandon Stone with cold eyes. "You think the workload is too much?" Brandon Stone looked at him with a pitiful expression, hesitating about how to answer. Seeing that expression, Victor Stone's thin lips suddenly curved. "Fine, you don't have to do the reports anymore." "Really?" Brandon Stone's face brightened, about to praise his older brother, but the words were immediately stuck in his throat. "In 3 days, you will go directly to Africa. Handle logistics over there, Victor Stone said indifferently, as if this decision was entirely appropriate. Africa? Brandon Stone looked at Victor Stone in disbelief. Brother, did I hear you right? That's Africa. It's so hot there, I'll get sunburned. Besides, isn't there already someone managing things there? He couldn't understand why he had to face such a severe punishment. Victor Stone picked up a file from his desk and tossed it onto the table. I think your eyesight is poor, you need some training. My eyesight? Brandon Stone blinked in confusion, realizing that he really had made his brother angry. He quickly leaned in. Brother, just tell me what I did wrong. Victor Stone's eyes narrowed. You couldn't even tell the cleaning lady from Serena Clark. What use do you think you are to the company? The cleaning lady. Serena Clark. Brandon Stone frowned, blinking repeatedly. Suddenly, he slapped his forehead. So that cleaning lady was Serena Clark. No wonder she seemed a bit strange. Victor Stone's gaze became sharp. Just now, you seem to be enjoying using my woman. Brother, I was wrong. I really didn't recognize that woman as. Brandon Stone immediately went silent. Now he finally understood why his brother was angry. Remembering that he had scolded Serena Clark earlier, he felt deep regret. Brother, I didn't know it was sister-in-law. Please, show mercy, don't send me to Africa. I will try to make up for my mistake. Brandon Stone forced a smile, looking hopefully at Victor Stone, but Victor Stone seemed not to hear, replying coldly, Africa is good for improving eyesight. Brother, do you really have the heart to let your handsome brother go out in the sun like that? Besides, I heard there are cannibal tribes in Africa. If I get eaten, you will never see me again. If you say another word, you will stay in Africa forever, no need to come back, Victor Stone replied coldly, his face unchanged. Brandon Stone immediately closed his mouth, his frustration building up throughout the afternoon. Before leaving the room, he weakly asked Victor Stone again, Brother, is there any way I can avoid going to Africa? Victor Stone glanced at him, depends on your performance. Got it, brother, I promise I'll do well. Finally, there was a glimmer of hope. Brandon Stone's face immediately lit up with determination as he left. After he left, Victor Stone's phone screen flashed, showing a message. Master, there's a woman loitering suspiciously at the gate. I have seen her several times on the surveillance cameras. Should we call the police? The steady voice of the butler came through. A suspicious woman. Victor Stone's lips curved into a smile. He could guess who it was even with his eyes closed. It must be Serena Clark. Just let her be, I will be home shortly. Just make sure she doesn't enter the gate. Understood, master. After hanging up the phone, Victor Stone smiled slightly. He was curious to see how persistent Serena Clark could be. Half an hour later, a black limited edition Rolls-Royce Ghost slowly drove along the small road. As soon as she saw the license plate, Serena Clark immediately ran over and knocked on the car window. Director Stone, it's me, Serena Clark. Come out, I have something important to tell you. Victor Stone looked up at her indifferently, then coldly said to the driver in front, no need to stop, just drive straight in. Yes, Director. The driver glanced at Victor Stone through the rearview mirror and respectfully nodded. Seeing the car drive past her, Serena Clark hurriedly reached out her hand, trying to chase after it, shouting, Director Stone, about what happened just now, I'm really sorry, but I have something important to tell you. Please be generous. Serena Clark ran straight to the gate, but was stopped by the butler. Miss, you can't enter. Please, sir, I really have something important to say to Victor Stone. Serena Clark clasped her hands together, pleading, then moved around the butler, leaning against the gate and shouting inside, Director Stone, I won't talk about personal matters anymore, I'll talk about our company's project, okay? The black car stopped in the courtyard, and Serena Clark thought that Victor Stone had finally agreed to meet her. A smile appeared on her face. However, after getting out of the car, Victor Stone did not allow her to enter, nor did he take a step towards her. Instead, he simply had a lounge chair brought over and sat there, leisurely drinking coffee with interest. Serena Clark's face immediately fell, thinking to herself, Victor Stone is obviously doing this on purpose. But there was no other way, she could only weakly continue to call out, Director Stone, please let me in so I can explain the details to you. I'm sure you'll find this project interesting. Victor Stone sipped his coffee, looking at Serena Clark with an amused expression, his lips slightly curved. I know you are planning to hold a fashion show in Gray City, and you will definitely need many designers. I think if you look at my plan, you will find it very fresh and impressive. Please let me in. Saying this, Serena Clark sincerely took out the design sketches from her bag. Victor Stone slightly raised his long eyes, just gave it a cold glance without any reaction. Seeing Serena Clark so persistent, he even felt a bit of pride inside. Serena Clark looked at his uncooperative demeanor, turned away angrily, leaned on the gate, and muttered, What's so great about being the director of Cap D'One Saint Virtue? I think he's just a stingy man. Although her voice was low, it still reached Victor Stone's ears, his unusually sensitive ears. Seeing her angry face, instead of being annoyed, he found himself even more entertained. Serena Clark stood in her high heels for such a long time that she was truly exhausted. She also knew that it was impossible to discuss the project today, so she turned away without saying more, waved her hand tiredly, and walked away. Seeing her suddenly give up, Victor Stone stood up from the lounge chair, intending to go out but then stopped again. He waved for the butler next to him, prepare a car. If she can't catch a ride on the road, give her a lift. The butler bowed respectfully, yes, young master. Serena Clark had already walked quite far but hadn't found any car. Just as Stone's car was about to show up, she unexpectedly ran to another car. Through the windshield, she saw the person sitting in the front was Brandon Stone, and she immediately stretched her arms out in front of the car. A screeching sound of brakes echoed, the blue supercar nearly hit her. Brandon Stone was scared out of his wits because of the near accident. It took him a while to get out of the car, initially a bit annoyed, but as soon as he recognized her, his attitude immediately changed, and he worriedly asked, Serena Clark, why is it you? Are you okay? Why did you suddenly jump out like that? Finally, having caught someone close to Victor Stone, Serena Clark fell to the ground, holding her ankle, her face showing pain. It seems like I sprained my ankle, it hurts so much, I don't think I can walk. Saying that, she looked up at Brandon Stone, her eyes shimmering with tears. Brandon Stone immediately panicked. Of all people to nearly hit, it had to be Serena Clark. If his older brother knew, he definitely wouldn't let him off easily. Hey, don't cry, I'll take you to the hospital. Brandon Stone quickly squatted down to help her up. Seeing his worry, Serena Clark took advantage of the situation and grabbed his arm. I don't want to go to the hospital. I want to see Victor Stone. Take me to see Victor Stone, I have something very important to tell him. You've sprained your ankle, you should go to the hospital first. Meeting my brother isn't urgent. Brandon Stone didn't dare to take her to his older brother now, if he did, his own little life might be at stake. Your brother doesn't want to take responsibility for me. Just now I went to find him, and he didn't even let me in. Serena Clark, seeing Brandon Stone was unwilling, cried even louder. Take responsibility. Brandon Stone was confused. Yes, I'm pregnant, but your brother doesn't want to see me. Brandon Stone was stunned, his mouth wide open. You're pregnant? Yes. Serena Clark pretended to look pitiful and nodded. Yes, me and your brother. Before, I didn't want to find him, didn't want to bother him, but now I'm pregnant. If I can't see him, I really don't know what to do about the baby inside. Brandon Stone looked down at her, unable to say anything. Brandon Stone quickly helped Serena Clark stand up, saying, Get in the car quickly, I'll take you to my brother. He absolutely dared not slack off in the slightest about this matter. He opened the car door and quickly helped Serena Clark into the car. In the car, Serena Clark covered her mouth, smiling smugly as her little plan succeeded. In the front seat, Brandon Stone was still in shock, unable to recover. This was too sudden. His brother was suddenly going to become a father. Once he processed it, he looked through the rearview mirror and saw Serena Clark already asleep. So sleepy. He had no idea that Serena Clark had just cleaned the office and waited at the gate of the Stone family, which made him more convinced that she was indeed pregnant. Seeing her hand resting on her belly, Brandon Stone immediately texted Victor Stone, "Brother, sister-in-law is in my car. She said she's pregnant, and I'm bringing her to meet you." Receiving the message, Victor Stone smiled slightly. This woman really dared to play any trick she wanted. Since she wanted to walk into the trap herself, Victor Stone nodded and quickly replied, "Bring her to the old house." Brandon Stone frowned slightly at the message but, wanting to show his seriousness, didn't ask anything further and turned the car towards the old house. "Sister-in-law, wake up, we're here." Serena Clark rubbed her eyes, looked outside at the unfamiliar building, and asked in confusion, "Where is this? Weren't we going to meet Victor Stone? Why am I here? This is the old house of the Stone family. My brother said he'd come here to pick you up." Brandon Stone opened the car door and carefully helped Serena Clark out. "The old house?" Serena Clark widened her eyes. "Isn't this where your parents live?" Brandon Stone calmly nodded, "Yes." Serena Clark panicked immediately, hastily waving her hand to refuse to get out. Forget it, I'll meet your brother some other day. I'm really scared to meet the parents. Let's leave." She just wanted to use this excuse to meet Victor Stone, but now she had to meet his parents. What could she say? She couldn't exactly say she was really pregnant, could she? Brandon Stone smiled slightly, his voice warm and reassuring, "Don't worry, my parents are very kind. You'll see. There's no need to be afraid." No. I don't want to meet your brother anymore." Serena Clark instinctively tried to move back. But at that moment, a cheerful female voice rang out, "Brandon, why are you back but not coming inside?" Serena Clark looked up and saw a middle-aged woman in a purple cheongsam slowly approaching them. Her heart sank. It was too late now, she couldn't run. In her panic, she wanted to beg Brandon Stone not to say anything, but before she could open her mouth, Brandon Stone had already said, "Mom, I was waiting for sister-in-law to get out of the car." Sister-in-law. Florence Bloom, Stone's mother, looked at Brandon Stone in confusion, then at Serena Clark, who was stepping out of the car with a stiff expression. Florence Bloom was taken aback. "Who is this, Brandon?" Smiling lightly, Brandon Stone introduced, "Mom, this is my brother's girlfriend, Serena Clark." "Hello, Auntie, I'm Serena Clark," she forced a smile, awkwardly waving at Florence Bloom. At that moment, she really wanted to find a hole to crawl into. Initially, Florence Bloom was a bit surprised, but she quickly broke into a bright smile, clearly delighted. Her son, who was always indifferent to women, now had a girlfriend. After speaking, Florence Bloom immediately grabbed Serena Clark's hand and led her into the courtyard. Serena Clark, such a beautiful name. Serena Clark could only smile awkwardly, stiffly following along. The hand held by Florence Bloom began to sweat, her brow furrowed, completely at a loss for what to do. Florence Bloom turned around, gently asking Brandon Stone, "Your brother's girlfriend is here, why isn't he back with her?" "Big brother still has work to finish, but sister-in-law is pregnant and needs care, so he asked me to bring her back first." The news of pregnancy slipped out of Brandon Stone's mouth, leaving Serena Clark choking and coughing repeatedly. She hadn't even figured out how to explain being a girlfriend, and now Brandon Stone said she was pregnant. Serena Clark felt like crying but had no tears left, her entire being on the verge of collapse. Pregnant? Hearing this, Florence Bloom opened her mouth in surprise but couldn't hide her joy. She looked at Serena Clark's belly. When did this happen? Victor, that boy. Such a big thing, and he didn't say a word. She continued, pregnancy means you shouldn't exert yourself. Quickly, sit down on the sofa and rest. While saying this, Florence Bloom carefully supported Serena Clark, as if she were a precious treasure. Seeing this, Serena Clark instantly felt a pang of guilt. Just from Florence Bloom's demeanor, it was clear she really wanted a grandchild. But now. Auntie, actually. Serena Clark hesitantly grabbed Florence Bloom's hand, wanting to explain, but Florence Bloom was already looking at her expectantly. How many months? Have you been to the hospital for a checkup yet? You have to be extremely careful at this stage. Seeing the deep anticipation in her eyes, Serena Clark bit her lip, unable to bring herself to speak at this moment to admit that she was actually deceiving. Auntie, I'll sit down, sit quickly. Florence Bloom held on to Serena Clark's arm, gently helping her sit down on the sofa, smiling at her. Wait for Victor to come back, we'll talk about your wedding. Wedding? Serena Clark felt a heavy sense of guilt in her heart. She knew that this time she had gone too far. What should she do now? Serena Clark clenched her fists, feeling anxious inside. So, how did you and Victor meet? Florence Bloom personally brought a plate of fruit to place in front of Serena Clark. Even though it was their first meeting, Mrs. Stone gave her such a warm feeling. Well, Serena Clark bit her lip, not knowing how to continue lying. Seeing Serena Clark hesitate, Brandon Stone quickly tugged at Florence Bloom's sleeve. Mom, this is sister-in-law's first time visiting our home. You might be scaring her a bit. Right. Reminded by her son, Florence Bloom calmed herself. She turned to Serena Clark with an apologetic look. Serena Clark, I'm so sorry, Auntie got a little too excited. Seeing Mrs. Stone's sincere face, Serena Clark bit her lip tightly. She really couldn't keep deceiving them any longer. She couldn't let herself become such a selfish person. She looked up at Mrs. Stone, guilt filling her heart. Auntie, actually, I'm not. Before she could finish saying the word pregnant, a respectful voice came from the door. Young master, you're back. Serena Clark turned her head, seeing the cold face of Victor Stone, and her heart trembled, her body shrinking instinctively. Now that Victor Stone had returned, she found herself in an even more awkward situation. To avoid being publicly humiliated, Serena Clark quickly turned back, saying, Auntie, actually, But suddenly, large hands landed on her shoulders, and Serena Clark felt her body being lifted, falling right into Victor Stone's embrace. She looked up and met Victor Stone's smile, one with a hint of mystery. Mom, let me introduce you, this is my girlfriend. Victor Stone naturally held Serena Clark in his arms, his face showing no sign of discomfort. Serena Clark looked up at the man gazing down at her. Victor Stone had introduced her like that. What was he doing? Shouldn't he be throwing her out right now? Florence Bloom smiled as she looked at the two of them, feeling more and more that they were a perfect match. This kid, having a girlfriend and not even telling me. Waiting until she's pregnant to bring her home. Serena Clark hurriedly waved her hand. No, Auntie, actually, Victor Stone bent down, whispering into her ear, play along, and I'll consider your project. The warm breath on her ear made Serena Clark shiver. She looked up at Victor Stone's face briefly, and responded in a low voice, no way, this is not a game. My mother has heart problems, do you really want to expose everything now? Serena Clark hesitated immediately. Seeing the two of them whispering, Florence Bloom was overjoyed. Since everyone is happy today, don't go anywhere, stay for dinner at home. I'll cook myself. Florence Bloom said, humming a tune as she turned to the kitchen. Brandon Stone also stood up, gesturing with his hands, I don't want to eat food full of love. Saying that, he went back to his room, leaving the living room to the happy couple. Now, in the living room, there were only the two of them. Serena Clark looked around, pulling Victor Stone down onto the sofa, speaking softly, "Director Stone, I'm very sorry about today, but you see, the pregnancy thing was just something I made up to meet you. I must explain clearly to Auntie." Victor Stone raised an eyebrow. Made up? Made up and dared to come all the way to the Stone family's old house. Serena Clark bit her lip, feeling troubled. "I didn't think Brandon Stone would bring me here. But I assure you, it wasn't on purpose. If I knew I'd be brought here, I'd rather die than make up something so ridiculous. But seeing Auntie so hopeful, I really feel guilty." Serena Clark bowed her head, face full of regret. Victor Stone looked down at her. "You made this mess, you have to deal with it. Don't worry, I'll go explain to Auntie right now. I'll take full responsibility. I'm really sorry." Serena Clark earnestly raised her hand in a vow to Victor Stone, then turned, intending to go to the kitchen. Victor Stone leaned back on the sofa, his voice slightly deep. "My mother has a heart condition, remember?" Serena Clark paused, turned back, her face full of difficulty. "But if I don't say it now, it'll be harder for Auntie to accept later. You saw how well she treated me, I really don't want to lie to her." Victor Stone looked at her, showing no concern. "I already said, you made the mess, you clean it up. What do you want me to do?" Serena Clark had to return, sitting down slowly. "Very simple, go along with it. If you're playing the role of a pregnant woman, then act it properly." "But..." "Dinner time." Florence Bloom brought the dishes to the table, smiling as she waved to them. "Serena Clark, I didn't know what you like, so I just made a few simple dishes." Seeing how enthusiastic Mrs. Stone was towards her, Serena Clark really couldn't bring herself to say anything more. She had no choice but to sit down. Florence Bloom handed Serena Clark some brochures. "Serena Clark, take a look at these hotels and tell me which one you like, so we can finalize the wedding location." Hearing the word, wedding, Serena Clark was so startled that her chopsticks fell onto the table. She quickly picked them up, covering her forehead with one hand, casting a pleading glance at Victor Stone sitting next to her. However, Victor Stone completely ignored her, his face showing only an expression that seemed to say, "Handle it yourself, I'm just here to watch." Florence Bloom looked at her worriedly. "Serena Clark, are you all right? Do you feel uncomfortable?" No, I'm fine. It's just that I'm a bit tired from work today." Serena Clark forced a smile, her lips trembling as she tried to explain. "Tired?" Florence Bloom also put down her chopsticks and gently said, "Serena Clark, since you're pregnant, don't work too much. Don't let yourself get too tired, okay?" Serena Clark forced another smile and nodded. She really no longer felt like eating at that moment. Victor Stone reached out for the brochure, glanced at the two women, and calmly said, "Mom, let's discuss the wedding plans at home. He isn't feeling well, so I'll take him back first." "So early? Serena Clark, are you full?" "I noticed you haven't eaten much," Florence Bloom said, watching as the two of them prepared to stand up. She quickly got to her feet as well. This was her first time meeting her son's girlfriend, who was carrying the future heir of the Stone family, and they hadn't even talked much before they had to leave, which saddened her. Serena Clark tried to maintain a polite smile. "Auntie, I'm full. Thank you very much. Then, once you're feeling better, remember to visit us often with Victor," Florence Bloom said, grasping Serena Clark's arm, her eyes filled with warmth. Serena Clark nodded, "Yes, certainly." In the car, Serena Clark looked at the man driving. Seeing his cold expression, she hesitated, inching forward with her chin resting on the back of the seat. "Mr. Stone, I apologize for today. I didn't mean to. I'm truly sorry for the impact on you and your family." Through the rearview mirror, Victor Stone noticed Serena Clark's lowered face and his lips curved slightly in a subtle smile. Where do you live? Huh? Serena Clark was confused for a moment before she understood his question. I live in the mountain apartments. No more words came from Victor Stone, but Serena Clark could sense the car's speed increasing. Mr. Stone, I'm really sorry for today. You have to forgive me, Serena Clark said, hesitating for a long time before speaking. After all, she still needed to secure the partnership. If she upset Victor Stone today, her opportunity would be gone. Victor Stone gripped the steering wheel firmly, raising an eyebrow. You really think of everything for the sake of this partnership, huh? Serena Clark forced a nervous smile, unsure if he was complimenting or criticizing her. It's all for work, I'm genuinely sorry for the inconvenience. About your mom, could you please find a chance to explain and apologize to her for me? She's very kind to me, and I feel really guilty. If you want to apologize, do it yourself. But remember, my mom has a heart condition. If anything happens, you take full responsibility. Serena Clark immediately backed down. Then, what do you want me to do? Victor Stone shot her a quick, cold look. Act it out till the end. Serena Clark's eyes widened. Act it out till the end? What do you mean? Pretend to be my girlfriend. No, no. Serena Clark blinked. I can't do that. Then go tell my mom the truth yourself. And remember, if anything happens to her, you're responsible. Serena Clark lowered her head, nervously clenching her hands, not knowing what to decide. Seeing her hesitation, Victor Stone threw a file into her lap. Act with me, and the partnership will be yours. Serena Clark held the file, stunned, then hesitantly asked, so, if I act out this drama, you'll partner with me? Yes. Victor Stone noticed the calculative look in Serena Clark's eyes and smiled faintly. Serena Clark settled back in her seat, frowning in thought. It's just acting, she thought. She could secure the partnership and prevent Stone's mother from being shocked. It was a win-win situation. After a while, Serena Clark looked at the handsome man beside her and said, Fine, as part of the contract, I agree to act with you. But you have to promise to help me explain things to your mom when the time comes. All right, not only will I partner with you, but I'll help you deal with any jerks who've wronged you, Victor Stone said, his narrowed eyes filled with hidden meaning. Explaining things. He thought to himself, she might never get the chance. You, Serena Clark looked at him, slightly annoyed. You investigated me? Victor Stone glanced at her, not denying it. I had to look into anyone brazen enough to barge into my company. Serena Clark looked at him, feeling a bit uncomfortable about the invasion of privacy, but she had to admit that it was her rashness that got her there first. Florence Bloom handed Serena Clark some small booklets. Serena Clark, take a look at these hotels, pick the one you like and we will decide on the venue for the wedding. Hearing the word, wedding, Serena Clark was so startled that her chopsticks fell to the table. She quickly picked them up, put her hand on her forehead, and gave Victor Stone, who was sitting next to her, a pleading look. Victor Stone, however, completely ignored her, his face showing a look that seemed to say, deal with it yourself, I'm just here to watch. Florence Bloom looked at her worriedly. Serena Clark, are you okay? Are you feeling unwell? No, I'm fine. It's just that I'm a bit tired from work today. Serena Clark forced a smile, her lips twitching slightly as she tried to explain. Tired? Florence Bloom also put her chopsticks down, gently saying, Serena Clark, you are pregnant, you shouldn't work so much, don't let yourself get too tired. Serena Clark forced a smile and nodded. At this moment, she really had no mood for eating. Victor Stone reached over, grabbed the booklet, looked at the two people in front of him, and calmly said, Mom, let's discuss the wedding at home later. She's not feeling well, I'll take her home now. Leaving so soon? Serena Clark, have you eaten enough? I don't think you ate much, Florence Bloom said as she saw them preparing to stand up, quickly standing up herself. This was the first time she met her son's girlfriend, and she was pregnant with the Stone family's child. They hadn't had much chance to talk, and she felt quite reluctant to let them leave. Serena Clark tried to put on a polite smile. "Auntie, I'm full, thank you very much." "Then, when you feel better, remember to visit often with Victor." Florence Bloom took Serena Clark's arm, her eyes full of affection. Serena Clark nodded. "Yes, I will." In the car, Serena Clark looked at the man driving. Seeing his cold face, she timidly moved forward, resting her chin on the seat back. "Mr. Stone, I really apologize for today. I didn't do it on purpose, and I'm truly sorry for the trouble it caused you and your family." Through the rearview mirror, Victor Stone saw Serena Clark's bowed head, and the corner of his mouth lifted in an almost imperceptible smile. "Where's your home?" "Huh?" Serena Clark was confused for a moment before realizing what he was asking. "I live in Pusan Apartments." The car was silent from Victor Stone, but Serena Clark could feel the speed gradually increasing. "Mr. Stone, I'm really sorry. Please forgive me for today." Serena Clark lowered her head, hesitated for a long time, then finally spoke up. After all, she needed to secure the cooperation, and if she upset Victor Stone today, her opportunity would vanish completely. Victor Stone held the steering wheel firmly, raising an eyebrow. "You really will do whatever it takes for the cooperation, huh?" Serena Clark gave a reluctant smile, not knowing whether he was complimenting or mocking her. "I'm just doing it for work. I'm truly sorry for the trouble I've caused you. Also, about your mother, I ask you to find an appropriate time to help me explain, and please send my apologies to her. She treated me very well, and I really feel guilty. If you want to apologize, do it yourself. But remember, my mother has a heart condition. If anything happens, you are fully responsible." Serena Clark immediately backed down. "Then, what should I do?" Victor Stone glanced at her, coldly said, "Act it out until the end." Serena Clark widened her eyes. "Act until the end? What do you mean? Pretend to be my girlfriend?" No. Serena Clark blinked. I can't do it." "Then you go and explain it to my mother yourself. Remember, if anything happens to her, you are responsible." Serena Clark lowered her head, nervously wringing her hands, not knowing what decision to make. Seeing her hesitation, Victor Stone threw a file at her. "Act with me, and the cooperation is yours." Serena Clark held the file in her hand, stunned, then hesitantly asked Victor Stone, "If I finish this act, you'll cooperate with me, right?" "Yes." Victor Stone saw the calculating look in Serena Clark's eyes, the corners of his lips lifting slightly. Serena Clark returned to her seat, furrowed her brows, and thought. It's just acting, and she could get the contract and prevent Stone's mother from being shocked. It seemed like a win-win. After a while, Serena Clark looked at the handsome profile of the man in front of her and said, "All right, as part of the contract, I'll agree to act with you. But you also have to promise me, when there's a suitable opportunity, you must help me explain everything to your mother." "Okay, not only will I sign the contract, but I'll also help you deal with those cheaters." Victor Stone narrowed his eyes, full of hidden meaning. As for explaining, perhaps he'd never give her the chance to do that. "You." Serena Clark looked at him with some irritation. "You've investigated me, haven't you?" Victor Stone glanced back at her, not denying it. "For someone who dared to barge into my company, I had to check." Serena Clark looked at him. Though feeling uncomfortable about the invasion of her privacy, she had to admit it was her fault for recklessly barging in first. Upon hearing this, Serena was a little surprised. The matter of Victor Stone's fiancée had never been mentioned, and she also didn't know whether pretending to be his lover would truly affect Victor Stone. For this, Serena thought it necessary to find some time to clarify with Victor Stone. However, at this moment, Serena absolutely could not show weakness in front of Olivia. Serena raised her head, smugly looking at Olivia. So what? Didn't you also know that Charles Harrington already had a fiancée, yet you still got into his bed? Olivia bowed her head and replied, it's not the same. Charles and I love each other, and it was clearly him who cheated first. You were the one who wronged Charles first. Serena grabbed Olivia's arm, her face cold. You and Charles Harrington had better love each other for the rest of your lives, never break up, because a slut belongs with a dog. That's exactly what you two deserve. Olivia was furious, her eyes widened, rage welling up. She couldn't argue with him, so she could only point and scream, you just wait. Olivia turned and angrily ran to the Clark house. Late at night, the old villa of the Clark family was still brightly lit. In the living room, as soon as Olivia stepped in, she began to cry, clinging tightly to her father's arm, fabricating a story. Dad, I just want what's best for my sister, but she. I know she's angry with me, but I really only want what's best for her. Robert Clark looked at his daughter's red eyes, heart aching as he gently patted her shoulder. What's wrong? Who made you cry like this? I just saw my sister, she insisted on dragging Victor Stone upstairs. I thought it was late, and my friend said that young Master Stone already had a fiancée. I was afraid she would cause trouble for our family, and even more afraid she would become the third person in someone else's relationship, so I tried to advise her. But she not only wouldn't listen, she also insulted me and Charliza. Olivia cried as she spoke, pretending she had been deeply wronged. Dragging young Master Stone upstairs. Robert Clark frowned, slammed his hand on the table, and stood up. How could I have such a shameless daughter? Truly disgracing the Clark family. Dad. Olivia weakly stood up, looking up at him. Don't be angry anymore, it's actually not entirely her fault. She did it just to help the company get the project. Although her actions were wrong, there's still a reason that can be forgiven. Robert Clark grew even more enraged, his face showing clear anger. For a project, she climbs into someone else's bed? That's called a reason to forgive. Olivia, you're too kind, always getting bullied. And even if Victor Stone isn't married, if he comes around, what face does the Clark family have left? Absolutely not, it can't happen. Furious, Robert Clark went to grab his phone. Watching her father's anger, Olivia immediately stopped crying, her lips curling into a sly smile. Just wait, Serena, Dad will definitely teach you a lesson. Serena had just stepped out of the bathroom when she heard her phone ring. Since her hair was still wet, she didn't check who it was and simply picked up. Hello? Serena, do you have any shame left? Before she could even bring the phone to her ear, a piercing scolding echoed. Serena frowned, coldly asking, what did I do? What did you do? I didn't raise you for this long for you to become someone else's mistress. The mistress? Serena suddenly remembered what Olivia had said at the door. It seemed like Olivia had gone home and cried, exaggerating everything. She dried her hair while coldly sitting down on the sofa. I didn't do that, please don't falsely accuse me. Your sister saw it with her own eyes. Are you still denying it? Serena sneered, so you just believe everything Olivia says? On the other end, Robert Clark was slightly taken aback, but only for a moment before raising his voice. What if Olivia said it? Olivia is usually obedient and gentle, of course her words are more trustworthy than yours. More trustworthy than mine. Serena gave a bitter smile. Dad, I really don't understand. After all these years of you raising us, you still can't tell what kind of people we are. Clearly, it was Olivia and Charles Harrington who wronged me, yet you put all the blame on me. I am really disappointed in you. The phone was silent for a moment. Serena didn't know what her father was thinking, but just as she was about to hang up, she heard him continue, no matter what, you can't go seducing young Master Stone for any purpose. The Stone family is not someone we can afford to offend. Serena let out a cold laugh, clenching her hand. I am the legitimate girlfriend of Victor Stone. It's not called seduction. Dad, Please watch your words. You're lecturing your father now. Serena didn't reply, just took a deep breath, coldly asking, "Is there anything else, Dad?" Hearing her confident assertion of her relationship with Victor Stone, Robert Clark temporarily restrained his anger. All right. But remember, don't do anything that would disgrace the Clark family anymore." Serena smiled faintly, a sarcastic smile. "I understand. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up." Ending the call, Serena leaned back on the sofa, her eyes gazing far away. She felt as if her chest was being compressed, making it hard to breathe. It turned out that no matter how much effort she made, she could never make her father understand or trust her. To him, only Olivia was trustworthy, while she would forever be the disobedient daughter. "Tomorrow, bring Victor Stone home for a visit. I couldn't believe that the young master of the Stone family would even pay attention to you. Go home with him." Serena coldly bowed her head, refusing outright. "I think this is unnecessary. My affairs are none of your concern. If you have time, it's better you go look after your decent daughter, and leave me alone." "Serena! How dare you speak to me like that? After all, I am your father. Without me, you wouldn't even exist. If you don't bring young Master Stone home tomorrow, I'll go to the Stone family myself. I want to see whether they will accept you or not." After finishing, he slammed the phone down. The black limited edition Rolls-Royce Ghost from Eclipse Motors stopped outside the SEC building. Victor Stone, dressed in a deep blue suit, walked into the SEC building, followed by his assistant. "Ah! That's the CEO of Stone Corporation. He's really handsome." The receptionists watched the man ahead, with an air as regal as a king, astonished to the point of not being able to close their mouths. "Sasha, he really is handsome. Look, the CEO of Stone just looked at me." Even as Victor Stone stepped into the CEO's private elevator, the excited scream still echoed. These infatuated expressions actually annoyed Victor Stone. As Olivia Clark stepped out of the water room, she happened to see the manager leading Victor Stone into the reception room. She was so shocked that her mouth dropped open, and she quickly stepped back a bit. "My goodness, am I seeing things? Did Victor Stone just suddenly show up here? Could it be that he actually agreed to cooperate with SCC? No, I have to leave a good impression." Thinking of this, Olivia Clark quickly put down her coffee cup, adjusted her dress, even tucked her hair back, and then put on her 8 cm high heels, shyly approaching Victor Stone. "CEO Stone, hello. I am a designer at SCC, my name is Olivia Clark, and I was initially in charge of the TW project. I have been to St. Virtue a few times before, but unfortunately, I couldn't meet you. This year, being able to meet you, I am truly very happy." Olivia Clark smiled and politely extended her slender hand towards Victor Stone, but Victor Stone only looked down coldly at her, showing no intention of shaking her hand. "Is there something you need?" Victor Stone asked indifferently. Olivia Clark stood there in awkward silence, her face showing some embarrassment. "Ah, CEO Stone, I just wanted to briefly introduce this project." "No need." Victor Stone interrupted her, glancing at her lightly. "If it's unrelated to the project right now, then there's no need to talk to me. This matter." Olivia Clark immediately frowned, biting her lip, her small face looking rather pitiful. If it were someone else, they might be swayed by that vulnerable look, but for Victor Stone, a mere glance was enough to see through the falsehood.